Good afternoon, everyone. It's 2 o'clock. I'm here in council chambers, and members of council and staff are variously working from home, or some are in their offices here in the municipal center. So I will call this meeting to order, and I would like to begin, everyone, with just a moment of silence to honor the victims of what happened in Nova Scotia yesterday. So if you don't mind, we'll take a moment of silence before we get rolling. Thank you, everybody. And just so everybody knows, staff have lowered the flags at various areas in the municipality to half staff for that same purpose as well today. So I'll need a motion. The first is the approval of the agenda, that council approve the April 20th, 2020 special council meeting agenda as presented. Is that your hand up in the air, Councillor Tadman?
Yes, it is. Do you like it?
It's fine by me. Is there a seconder?
I'll second that.
Councillor Bateman had his hand up, so I'm taking Councillor Bateman as the seconder. Is there any discussion? All those in favor?
Yes.
Oh, sorry, I apologize. Under the procedural bylaw, because of these electronic meetings, all of our motions have to be discerned by recorded vote. So I will turn the floor over to the clerk, who will call the recorded vote by in alphabetical order. Madam Clerk.
Councillor Ron Anderson.
Yes.
Councillor Mark Bateman.
Yes.
Councillor Doug LeBlanc.
Yes.
Councillor Emily Rowley.
Yes.
Councillor Mary Tadman.
Yes.
Deputy Mayor Laura Vink.
Yes.
And Mayor Brian Ostrander.
Yes.
Carried.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Thank you, everyone. I'll ask if there are any declarations of pecuniary interest, and if so, please state the general nature thereof. There are none noted. So we'll move straight into motions, and our first is with regard to meeting schedules and the procedural bylaw, and it's moved by Mayor Ostrander, seconded by Deputy Mayor Vink. The council suspend the rules of procedure of the procedural bylaw 126/2018 subsection 4.2 regular meeting schedule of council and 4.3 council planning meetings to alter the order of business for the month of May to allow combined meetings for May 4th and May 19th, and to cancel meetings scheduled for May 11th, and further that the rules of procedure bylaw 126/2018 subsection 12.1 council agenda order of the day be suspended to alter the order of business during the COVID-19 pandemic to the following: call of order, approval of agenda, disclosure of pecuniary interest, staff reports, roundtable discussions, confirmation bylaw, and adjournment. Is there any discussion? Don't see any, so Madam Clerk, I'll ask you to call the vote by alphabetical order.
Councillor Ron Anderson.
Yes.
Councillor Mark Bateman.
Yes.
Councillor Doug LeBlanc.
Yes.
Councillor Emily Rowley.
Yes.
Councillor Mary Tadman.
Yes.
Deputy Mayor Laura Vink.
Yes.
Oh, and Mayor Brian Ostrander.
Yes.
It's carried.
Thank you again. So our second motion is with regard to events in the community, and it's also moved by myself, Mayor Brian Ostrander, second by Deputy Mayor Vink. Province has extended all emergency orders under Section 7.0.2 of the Emergency Management Civil Protection Act until May 12th, 2020, including the closure of outdoor amenities in parks and recreational areas, non-essential workplaces, public places and bars and restaurants, along with restrictions on social gatherings. This extension is to help stop the spread of COVID-19 and to protect the health and safety of Ontarians. That as a result of the ongoing COVID-19 issue and the Government of Ontario extending all emergency orders, Council feels it prudent to cancel all community events until the end of August 2020. So I'll open the floor for discussion. Deputy Mayor?
Thank you. I seconded this motion. Obviously, we certainly have to do something. I hate how the end of August 2020 sounds. Sounds like we're going to miss the whole season, but I do understand that we have to pre-book a lot of these events, and that's the reason for it. Once things do open up a little bit, if it's possible for us to have some of these events, the concerts in the park or any sort of event, it would be great for us to be able to do those things still. So although I will vote in favor of this, I'm hoping that at one point maybe we can do something a little bit different, and maybe, you know, in the month of August we will be able to do a few things, or September. So anyway, just my thoughts on this.
Thank you. Councillor Bateman?
I know it's state community events. Does this have any applicable impact to, say, Brighton baseball, Brighton soccer, and so forth?
This would not be applicable to those, but what would apply to those would be the closure of all the sports fields under provincial order.
Okay.
Anyone else? Councillor LeBlanc?
Through you, Your Honor. So if it's due till May 12th, so the sports fields would be closed till May 12th. The same as that the fishing docks, like I live with my wife, we're always in contact, and why couldn't we go fishing in the boat if nobody else joins the boat to go fishing, to get rid of all the events? And like our parks are closed, people need to get out because this what do they call it? Cabin fever, I think, is going to be diagnosed very shortly as a disease. If this goes much longer, people can't go out and walk or get to somewhere where they can do something. And I kind of agree, August is a long time, but we have to start educating ourselves on social distancing, washing. So we're going to wait till after August till we get ourselves all together and learn this, because this virus is here for a while. It's not going to go away overnight. Just my point. I will vote with this to go to August, but it's just, I wanted to put my viewpoints in there also.
Thank you, Councillor LeBlanc. And to your point, people may go out in their boats if they can access lakes and rivers through private launches. It's the public boat launches that have been closed because they're considered recreational facilities, and we've closed them under provincial order. Our parks are still open, but the facilities in the parks are closed. So King Edward Park has been closed because it's entirely sports facilities or playgrounds, but Memorial Park is still open and our other parks are still open. Conservation authorities are still open and walking trails remain open. Unless people have difficulty with the physical distancing nature of some of the trails, I think that will remain. At least that's my understanding from the information I've seen. So I agree with you. Some people do need to get out and about, and there are opportunities for that as long as the physical distancing protocols are maintained. So thank you for your comments, Councillor LeBlanc. Councillor Tadman?
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. I will support this motion, but I certainly think that maybe we might be able to amend it for some of the events, and so that will be a possibility. Is that correct?
Should the pandemic be deemed over, or should a vaccine be found in the short term, we can certainly rescind this motion at any time.
Right, and I just I don't know where it came from, but I understand that the people in the Ottawa Valley, probably the East Coast, cabin fever is driving people shack-wacky, and I just want to let you know that I'm doing very well here in God's country, And Councillor LeBlanc, you can launch your vote from my place.
There you go. Problem solved.
You're gonna have a
Thank you,
crowd.
Thank you, Councillor Patton.
Deputy Mayor.
Thank you. I don't know if people are asking about Applefest as well. I don't know if we want to throw Applefest into this. I don't know if we even want to have that conversation. I don't know if we want to save it for another meeting. I certainly don't want to see us canceling something like Applefest right away, but I know how much preparation goes into it. And I'm not sure if a gathering of 10,000 will be allowable in September or not. But I'm just throwing it out there. Does anyone want to have that conversation yet? Do we want to leave it for our next meeting? It's certainly something we need to discuss. I don't want to be hasty about it either, but there's a committee that's raring to go, but everyone's afraid to do anything because we can't start booking anything.
May I say something there?
Of course.
Laura, I believe that you might have you haven't started taking any bookings yet, I understand, as far as vendors go. So it could be a real challenge if it's delayed for another month or so before you actually jump in and start that process. It might be a weak turnout just from the vendors not knowing what to do, or they may be having a challenging year themselves, where if they're traveling here to come to be a vendor here, or our local businesses will have a lot on their plate when they get back streaming in their business too. So it might be welcome to them, but it might be a challenge for everybody. So it might be a consideration that might be a consideration to make a decision now, perhaps.
Councillor Bateman.
Two things, just what the Deputy Mayor spoke about Applefest. I'm in agreement. I'd rather see the Applefest committee. I don't know if they're meeting virtually. Maybe they can have a virtual meeting and then come back with what they feel they can or cannot do. And then, as the Deputy Mayor indicated, maybe talk about this at the next meeting after we hear from the actual committee.
So just to speak to that quickly, Councillor Bateman, we suspended all committee meetings through April. And we'll be talking about whether or not to allow committee meetings to move forward in this agenda here. So I suspect Applefest has not formally met, although probably people have been talking about how to move forward when that time comes. And that's probably where the Deputy Mayor's comments are coming from. Councillor Tadman?
I think in all practicality, with the separation for two people, just imagine 10,000 people and trying to separate them that far. We'd use up the whole area of the municipality. I think in practical terms, we can't do Applefest.
Councillor Rowley?
Thank you, Mayor. I would agree with Laura. I'm not so sure that we should maybe have that discussion today. I would certainly like to see where we go in the agenda with what advisory committees can do, and that maybe our committee could have a look at that and maybe come up with some, maybe a small option. Maybe I do agree 10,000 people in Brighton in September is probably not going to be good or work, but I think there might be some options that maybe as a committee we could look at. So I would be in favor of waiting until such time that council permits committees to meet. Hopefully that would be soon, and that we could have a meeting with our committee and see if there are suggestions out there.
Deputy Mayor?
Thank you. I think that's a good idea. But I think then later on in the agenda, we have to allow Applefest to have a virtual meeting so we can talk about a few things, and then we can come back and with report to council, and a decision can be made if that's a possibility later on. We don't need to add it to this discussion right now, or this motion.
Councillor Bateman?
One last thing.
If we go back to the community sponsored events, the fastest approaching event coming up would be the walleye tournament. And I know that's primarily out of Quinte West, but we've had way stations, I believe, in the past down in Gosport. If our boat docks closed, are we going to have a way station down there, or is that going to be encompassed under this? I don't believe Quinte West has canceled that yet.
In fact, my understanding is the Kiwanis are prepared to move forward with the walleye tournament. So Mr. Miller, have we been contacted by the Kiwanis?
No, we have not. Haven't received any word from anybody regarding the new date. I'm aware of it, but nobody's talked to me about it. Regarding the community center, does this fall under that as well? The rentals for that till the end of August, or is it the provincial?
What we're doing in this is canceling all community events till the end of August. So I guess we should probably define community events a little better under this motion, because Mr. Miller brings up a valid point. Are we going to start writing deposit checks back to folks who have deposits down on the community center through until the end of August? So before I open the floor for that sort of side discussion, Councillor Anderson, you were looking to say something on the last bit.
Well, making these plans for, again, Applefest, I agree that the committee should have some input into this, but before we make a final decision. But I think the province is the one that's going to come down and tell us when we can do these, open the floor for these things. And I think end of August is just a guideline, because we don't know, and we don't know what they're going to say. And it doesn't sound like things may open up, and I don't think to the magnitude of having public events more than 50 or whatever their threshold will be. They might be small weddings allowed, there might be, but 5,000, 10,000, even a smaller version of the Applefest, maybe. But I think we won't know until it's almost too late to make to organize something efficiently.
Good and valid point. Councillor Bateman?
I was just going to say, I agree with that, but there's a side part that I would say that we'd have to look at as well, because we can't always rely on the province, but the province has said fishing will go ahead. So now that means we would have to make that decision, rely on the province.
That's correct. And Councillor LeBlanc?
Yes, I would agree with the statements. The thing that I heard on the walleye tournament, that it was put off to the May 2-4 weekend. That's what the fishermen are telling me, and when I bought my ticket. The other one is too, if this coronavirus is still going, Brighton doesn't have any cases. Do you want to bring cases into Brighton with too many people? But you also got to look at Canada Day. We might have a smaller event, maybe just the citizens and the vendors from Brighton, because it is an event that has gone on for a lot of years. We don't have the virus here in Brighton yet that I've heard of. So we got to look at it all, and also the province is saying till May 12th. So we're having council meetings after May 12th, and maybe if the Applefest committee or Canada Day committee can get together, we can find out more information by then. Your chair, thank you.
Welcome. It's my understanding that the province can only extend this emergency by 28 days at a time through the legislation. So that's why we're seeing these leapfrogs. But we're able to, we can't crystal ball this. No one knows when this is going to end or how this is going to end or what tomorrow is going to look like. But we do know that we have a committee that, in terms of our community events committee, that needs to be writing deposit checks and getting things in order for music in the park or movies in the park or Canada Day. And so that's why we're being asked to consider these closures now, because otherwise they'd need to start writing and signing people up for these events like Canada Day and so on. Now, in my discussions with the chair of the Community Events Committee, he's supportive of whatever council wants to do in terms of closures. And when I told him that this was going to be on the agenda and closing things down until the end of August, he was supportive of that, because he knows the kind of work that goes into preparing for these events. And of course, if we can rescind it and bring it back a bit, he's happy to work really hard and get some concerts in the park going for the end of the summer season, if they can do that. But he's also pleased that we're looking as far out as we can in this. Deputy Mayor?
Yes, I guess when I read this motion, I'm thinking, when I read community events, I'm thinking all the events planned by the Community Events Committee. That's my understanding. But if there's a broader term here, I think we do need to define what we are talking about here when we're canceling to the end of August. maybe we need to also be like the province and maybe not 28 days, but why don't we cancel to the end of July? You know what I mean? Like just maybe not so long, and then we can discuss it again later on. You know, the world has changed a lot in a few months. It may change again in a few months. We don't know that. But yes, Canada Day, I can't, it's not necessarily about what we're going to be able to do on that day. It's about planning ahead for those events. It takes months of planning in order for things to happen. So I don't think we're going to be able to have a Canada Day, and you know, unless we want to have a gathering of 5 people. At this point, I'm not sure that. I think that I need this defined a little bit more. What is it that we're canceling?
I saw someone else's hand. Was it Councillor Rowley? Go ahead.
Thank you. Yeah, I just want to go back to the Community Events Committee. I've also been in touch with the chair, and I know speaking with some of the committee members as well. As with most committees, a lot of the members are seniors. They're very concerned as well as to what their role could be in these kind of big crowds, and some of them will be fairly reluctant, I believe, to participate if there's a lot of with a lot of folks, you know, gathering in one small space. I agree with the deputy mayor. Maybe we should go month to month. Maybe we cancel everything until the end of July, which would include Canada Day and half of the concerts, for sure. I'm not sure exactly. I know before this started, we did have a lot of musicians, a lot of groups ready to go, more or less. But you know, that I think there's been less correspondence as well, as of course those folks don't know if they want to come to Brighton either with what's going on. So yeah, I would agree. Maybe we wait. Maybe we cancel till the end of August or till the end of July and see what maybe August brings.
Councillor Tadman.
Thank you, Mayor. The more I think about all of this, for one thing, I don't think you can cancel Canada Day. It is. And so I know that the federal government has already announced that they're going to do a Canada Day virtually. So there'll be something online for people. And I think we've got a lot of creative people in Brighton. I'm not one of them. I have no IT experience, and I don't have a lot of desire to learn more. But I know there's a lot of people out there, and I think we could do something quite nice here in Brighton, the same as some of the other events. So I don't know. I'm more with what. 1 second, sorry. I don't think we cancel till the end of August. The more I think about it, I think at least to the end of July. But I wouldn't put out there that we're canceling Canada Day. I think that sounds pretty sad.
And we haven't specifically said Canada Day in this. We're just canceling events through to, and we'll pick a date.
But Canada Day is an event.
It would be one of the events that we could be not holding this year because of this motion. Yes.
May I say something?
Go ahead.
When it comes to the recreation and then the hall with the weddings and that, I do believe that you need to give them a little bit more. By saying July, I sort of say August is okay. I think you need to stretch it a little more on some of those things. And then also in the summer sports, as in, I think Councillor Bateman mentioned, or someone mentioned soccer and baseball. Those are things people may get a little charged up thinking that, you know, we're going on the field in August and to let them down and shorter notice. It might be, and we have enough things to deal with, and I think the community needs to still be thinking of this situation as we have been, and not get too relaxed on this. So I'm still believing in end of August. I'm concerned about Apple Fest, but I think the committee needs to make that just final decision. So I think we should stay till end of August, and I'd like to hear from Jim on his opinion of that. My main thing was about the King Edward Park being a concern. So, can I ask Jim if you want to weigh in on that?
Mr. Miller, do you have anything to say on that?
All three. Mayor Ostrander. Yeah, that's a concern of mine, is like especially the hall, because there's a lot of yearly events that take place in the summer by some of the groups. That I do have 4 weddings booked, and they've paid their deposit, and I'm sure they're really antsy to find out whether all their planning is going to come to fruition or not. And the fields, I mean, we're going to be working hard to keep everything maintained, just in case we are able to get on the fields and play. I know minor ball, they're all different associations too, right? The Ontario Baseball Association is their main contact, and they kind of state when they can play. I guess it's just like the OMHA with hockey. Whatever they decide is what as a parent will be what the local associations will follow. So
can I have you back to you? Have you heard from any of those outside or larger organizations that will, they come from other communities to play here within that league or whatever? Have you heard from them on what they're planning on doing? Or they wait and see like us?
Well, I talked to Minor Ball last week, that their president, and he hasn't heard a thing. They haven't even had registration yet. He doesn't think they're going to be playing this year, from what he hears from the Ontario Minor Baseball Association. I know soccer had registration because they usually do their registrations in February, but again, I haven't heard anything, any of the groups trying to do anything this summer.
Councillor Bateman?
I was just 2 points on the outdoor recreation for soccer, whether it be baseball or not. That really falls under the provincial order. Those parks are closed until such time the premier says that they can open up, and then after that, that's when those associations, their governing bodies, would weigh in with a decision. So until the premier opens parks, we don't even have to worry about that discussion. And on the walleye tournament, I just wanted to confirm that Councillor LeBlanc is correct. The tournament has been pushed back to the 23rd and 24th.
The week after a long weekend.
So with council's permission and the deputy mayor as the seconder, I would amend the motion at the moment anyway to read where it says feels it is prudent to cancel all community events. I would add as hosted and coordinated by the Community Events and Civic Awards Committee, just to define what we're talking about in terms of a community event. So that would not include things like minor ball, minor sports, if those open up. It also wouldn't include private or non-municipal events like the walleye tournament. That would be determined by how we would be able to accommodate them or not. And we would leave that up to our staff to determine operationally if that could go forward in Brighton. Councillor Bateman?
I was going to say that would include the Yard on Main that has been, I think that's scheduled first week in July. So they'd have to be notified because the parks aren't open. That's a private event, but
that is a private event, but and the park is open.
That one is, yes.
Yeah. So that would not include them because they're not a municipal event. So they would have to determine how best to move forward unless we wanted to include them or that particular event in this, or any other particular event in this motion. Deputy Mayor?
I think though the whole point of this is that by provincial order, you can't have these large gatherings unless those things change. None of these events are allowed to happen. But that's not our decision to make. Whether someone has a wedding reception, that's not our decision to make. That is a decision that is going to be determined by when that order is lifted, right? So at this point, I think we're really just talking about community events. Yeah, Art on Main is a little bit of a gray area, but still it's a private event, and still there isn't allowed a gathering of that, and there's no businesses downtown that are open, or very few that are open, like with doors open sort of thing, right? I think we need to stick to community events.
Right. From a municipal perspective, I think you're right. and I would concur with the sentiment that Art on Main probably shouldn't move forward just based on the gathering requirements. More than 5 people, certainly in vendors alone, show up for that. So, you know, we would leave that up to the Art on Main group to determine how best to move forward. But I would hope that they would see that somebody could get charged if they coordinated an event where more than 5 people showed up. So, and they could get charged by a municipal bylaw officer. So they need to be aware of what's happening there in the world. And certainly those of us who know those coordinators should probably be in touch with them and maybe persuade them in the right, what I'll loosely refer to as the right direction. I don't know what's best for them in terms of their coordination and when they should look to be canceling. But I would leave that up to them to decide. Anyone else on this one? Councillor Rowley?
Thank you, Mayor. There again, Art on Main, are there any implications to the municipality if they were to say close Veterans Way Street, which I believe in the past they have done? Or I know it's Memorial Park is not a municipal park. However, it is a municipal park. So they're, you know, playing on in our playground more or less. Would there be any implications to the municipality then for allowing such an event to happen?
Good point.
Fair question. Mr. Castleman, would you like to chime in here? I don't know the answer to that.
I'm not sure if I know the answer. Also, obviously, we have some emergency orders that we have to abide by. So if the province or the feds are saying thou shalt do this or thou shalt not do this, we have to strictly abide by those orders. And each and every day, we're trying to interpret what those orders mean and how it impacts the municipality. So we would do the same thing. Right now, the parks and the playground amenities are closed to the public, with the exception of a walk-through along our trails or our parks. But beyond that, people are not allowed in.
Thank you. Someone else. Oh, Councillor LeBlanc. Your microphone, Doug.
Sorry, I muted. For a gathering of 5 people or more, they have to be within the 6-foot radius. If you're looking at the Prince Edward Park or the park, you're looking at almost an acre and a half. You can more than accommodate 5 people in there. And we have to educate ourselves, if this virus is going to stay around, on how we can have these type of meetings with our distancing and how we're going to put our boot to do it, because until we get a vaccine, or we got to get to some type of life. But it's five people within that 6-foot radius. Yeah.
Thank you. Could we ask staff to bring forward a report with regard to other things like our responsibility for things like, I'm not pointing them out, but groups like the Art on Main group that would rent our facilities, and sort of a best guess in what we can do to offer advice to those groups, or provide cancellations for them in a timely manner if we feel that that's necessary. Council, are you okay with that if we get Parks and Rec and administrative staff to offer that advice to us? I don't need a motion, just a bob of heads would be fine, or thank you. Okay. So right now the motion is to cancel all community events, and that's specific to municipal community events hosted by the Community Events Civic Awards Committee, and it still reads until the end of August 2020. Is that what we want?
I think so.
No, not me.
No.
So what do we want? End of July?
Yeah.
Yeah? End of July?
Yes.
Yes.
We can always revisit this in May or June to push it back. So,
Yeah.
There's lots of time.
okay, so Deputy Mayor, as the mover and seconder, we're okay with end of July for now, okay? Does that work? Yeah, okay.
Yes.
So I'm not gonna reread the whole motion, but the last paragraph in the motion reads that as a result of the ongoing COVID-19 issue and the Government of Ontario extending all emergency orders, Council feels it's prudent to cancel all community events as hosted and coordinated by the by the Community Events and Civic Awards Committee until the end of July 2020. And Madam Clerk, I have this in writing, so you can come collect this from me. If there's no further discussion, I will ask for the recorded vote, starting with, under the procedural bylaw, starting with the councillor in alphabetical order.
So there is one
Oh,
question.
go ahead, Councillor Anderson, go ahead.
So at any time we can push this another month, like just like.
That's right. We can,
All right.
at our next meeting, and that's really why we should have sort of an ongoing report about this, Mr. Castleman, just to keep it on the table in case we need to push it or rescind it at any time.
Yeah, hopefully we can rescind it.
Well, that would be nice, but I'm not anticipating that's going to happen anytime soon. Councillor LeBlanc?
That's all. To you, your mayor. That's the same that Councillor Ron Anderson said.
Okay.
As long as it's visited again, like we could visit it every meeting, and if we have to extend it or shorten it, we can do it. That's all I wanted to put in the motion. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Madam Clerk, go ahead and call the vote.
Councillor Ron Anderson,
Yes.
Councillor Mark Bateman,
Yes.
Councillor Doug LeBlanc,
Yes.
Councillor Emily Rowley,
Yes.
Councillor Mary Tadman,
Yes, and I got candy here. Would you like one?
Deputy Mayor Laura Vink,
Yes to the motion and yes to Councillor Tadman.
I'll have one for you.
Mayor Brian Ostrander.
Yes.
It's carried.
All right. Thank you, everyone. We move into staff reports. Our first report is from the CAO, and I'm going to turn the floor over to you, Mr. Castleman, so you can go through your report. And specifically, as I mentioned before the meeting, I think what council really wants to know are those items that are in absolute jeopardy or that you think are done for this year.
Sure. Thanks very much. The purpose of the report is to give council an update with respect to the 2020 capital projects, along with the 3 or 4 major operational initiatives that we approved during the 2020 budget. And I wanted to give you that update in the context of the pandemic and what implications that it might have on our ability to get some or all of the projects completed as we had envisioned. So what I've done is I've provided you with some of the legislation that we've been dealing with on an ongoing basis in order to assist staff in trying to understand what the implications might be. And I've also given you a comprehensive list of each and every capital project that we had envisioned for 2020. And I've indicated what the project is, the status of the project, what the budget is, and in staff's views, if projects are in jeopardy, we've indicated those that either are deemed to be non-critical projects and not allowed to be completed, and or projects that staff have deemed to be of lower priority, and given the staff resources that we have based upon business continuity initiatives, that we just won't be able to get to. So firstly, I wanted to go to the list, and I wanted to give you a little bit of an update with respect to what has occurred since the report went out. So there's a couple of updates that I wanted to bring to your attention. So I'm referring specifically to the detailed list of the 2020 capital project updates, and it's all of the various projects that have been initiated for the 2020 capital year. So wanted to give you an update, certainly in the fire department. One of the updates that I wanted to provide to you is with respect to the SCBA compressors. And I wanted to indicate to you that while the tenders were under review last week, the tenders have been looked at in detail, and the award of the tenders has occurred, I think, as of last Thursday or Friday. And I awarded the contract. It came in under budget. And that's a little bit of an update for you. Second update is with respect to 170 Main Street. And we have a project that has been lingering since 2019. And that's an update to the washrooms and to the total of about $70,000 or so. We had awarded the contract. We're ready to go. And then we had further provisions that do not allow us to continue on with that project. Very unfortunate, because it would be an ideal time to complete the project given that the YMCA has been closed. So that's an update for you. The third update is in relation to our industrial park. And for those who have toured through the industrial park over the course of the last couple of weeks, you will have noticed that we have some hydro poles up, and we were in the midst of getting ready to string the lines and to energize the park in anticipation of selling some more lots and getting on with the development within our industrial park. So we've been working closely with Hydro One, who have recently advised us that they're moving away from the project because of the provincial emergency orders that, in their view, have deemed this project not to be of criticality in nature. So they moved away and are focusing their attention on critical projects pursuant to the emergency orders that have come down from the province. So I thought it was important to give you an update with respect to not only you an update, council an update, but also the community an update with respect to all of the 2020 capital projects and those that are going to be in jeopardy. So I'm going to just take a minute and talk to you about those that I think are of low priority and or going to be in jeopardy as a result of the pandemic. So just bear with me. So I'm just going to run through the projects that have been deemed to be of low priority. I'm going to start out in the general government area. We had proposed to complete an IT master plan and proposed to purchase a number of different computers to help out with the operation. We had also proposed to turn our mind to repairing the bricks on the back end of our 35 Alice Street property. As you know, the bricks are flaking, and that's been an ongoing problem for a couple of years. We've also looked at the Alice Street generator and doing a redesign on that to try and understand what the load is going to be. Those are 4 projects that we've deemed to be of lower priority. If we have time and resources to get at them, we will. Having said that, they've been put aside in order to allow the remaining staff to focus on the higher priority project. So the next item that I've already talked about is the washroom project at the YMCA. That's certainly a project that is going to be put off because of the pandemic, in particular. When we're going to be able to get at that project, I don't know. As soon as YMCA is deemed as an essential business, we'll get back at it. But get notice from the province, that project will be put on hold. We have a couple projects out of the Public Works building down on Sharp Road. In particular, we have some various AC garage door work that we wanted to get completed to the tune of about $65,000. That's going to be put on hold. We had an HVAC system up in the Chatton garage. That's going to be put on hold, deemed to be lower priority in nature. We had anticipated doing some guardrail work. That's deemed to be a lower priority at this point in time. We'll get to it as we can. I'm going to move over to the parks area and talk to you about a few projects there. We have an exciting project that we received a significant grant for, and that's our skateboard facility. Having said that, that project has not been deemed to be a critical project by the province. So while we have the funding and are ready to go, that will be put on hold. We'll try and lift that as quickly as we can, but for now, that project certainly is in jeopardy as a direct result of the pandemic. We've got some tree replacement that's just been deemed as a lower priority. And we're looking at the dog park. We're trying to move forward with the establishment of the dog park as quickly as we can. Having said that, in the big picture, that's not high on the priority list. We're going to try and get to it as quickly as we can because of obvious reasons. It's a great amenity for the community, and if we can get it done, great. Having said that, it's not been deemed as a top priority. We've talked a little bit about our industrial park, and unfortunately that's a direct result of the pandemic. We're not going to be able to get it serviced by Hydro One until such time that industrial parks have been deemed to be an essential business. In the wastewater area, we have 2 or 3 projects that we're going to put on hold as a result of other priorities. We have the pumping station design that was to be completed. We have some work on the garage that we're going to put off to the tune of $60,000. We have a bypass chamber and valve work that is going to be put off. I think as we get going in the wastewater area for 2020, our focus is going to be squarely on getting the MBBR project done. And that's going to be priority number 1 in our wastewater area. And priority 2 and 3 will be the main pumping station and the force main project. But our view is the 2020 priority is the MBBR project. The pumping station and the force main, if it goes ahead, will be a 2021 project at best. A couple other items in the water distribution area. 2 projects that have deemed to be not high in the priority list are the water modeling to the tune of $75,000, and also the booster station study to the tune of about $10,000. Again, if we get to it, great, but it's not been deemed to be a priority project. Some of the main projects that we have in mind, we've done some pre-engineering, as you know, and we allocated about $528,000 to pre-engineering to try and get shovel-ready projects in the queue so that if we had necessary funding, we could go ahead. And certainly our main project for 2020 is Sanford Street. And we've had a public information session back in March. And you can see that we have about 90% of the design completed. We've outlined for you when we're planning on going to tender, when we're and approximately when construction is going to be completed. So we've done the same thing for the Sharp Road project. We've identified when we plan to go to tender, when we plan to get on with the project, and when we plan to complete the project. The third item is with respect to Telephone Road. And as you will recall, we had originally thought that, I'm going to take a step back. We've been having quite a discussion with respect to Telephone Road, and ultimately need to decide what level of service or what level of road or standard of road that we're going to provide. We have budgeted almost $1 million for that project. With that $1 million, we'd anticipated getting on with what I'll call the hard topping of the whole road from 26 to 30. There's been some discussion certainly of cost sharing with the county, and we need to do a little bit more homework in that regard. One of the thoughts that we had as a cost-saving measure was to give consideration to only hard topping a portion of that section of roadway, and also perhaps going to double surface treatment for the remainder. That would provide a significant cost savings to the municipality. We're not there yet. We're still trying to do a little bit of homework with respect to has there been a previous agreement with the county, yes or no? Our findings thus far have said no, there has not been, but there's some additional files that we need to review and determine is there a cost sharing or is there not? And if there is, that will assist us in getting on with hard topping of the project and with the cost sharing with the county. Otherwise, we may turn our mind to simply going to double surface treatment and doing the best job we can at significantly lower cost. So I want to move on from capital projects and talk to you a little bit about some major operational projects that we had in mind. As you recall, we have some sidewalk work that we wanted to get caught up on from years gone by. We have significant dollars that have been allocated, about $280,000 or so. Our intention is to continue on with that process and try and get the sidewalks done in 2020. We also had identified one of our major initiatives in 2020 was dealing with tree removal with diseased trees or trees that are falling down or dangerous trees. And we've allocated about $245,000 or so. Again, our intention is to get on with that project because of how critical it is from our perspective, from a safety concern. So our intention is to get on with that project and get it completed in 2020. We have our ongoing ditching program that we're going to continue on with, and we have ongoing brushing program that we're going to continue on with. We're going to do it in-house this year because of the purchase of a rubber tire excavator, sorry. And one of the other projects, and maybe Linda can jump in here, is with respect to business or building continuity for working through with Cogeco. There seems to be some issue with respect to funding from Cogeco, and as a result of that, that project has been put on hold for now, but I'll turn that over to Linda. You can jump in here.
So Cogeco had proposed being able to connect our rural buildings as well as all of our urban buildings. The urban buildings can be connected now to fiber, but the rural buildings, meaning the North Fire Hall and the North Shop, cannot be connected at this time. There's been a change in some of their funding levels, and so they've applied to the province and the feds for more money. And we have to wait and see how that turns out for them. We cannot afford to, it would be very expensive for us to be able to run fiber all the way out there. It would have to be a partnership with Cogeco.
Right. Thanks, Linda. So that gives you a bit of an update with respect to where we are in the 2020 capital program and what projects, quite frankly, have been deemed to be a lower priority and or are just not possible as a result of the pandemic and the emergency orders that have been declared by the province. So happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Castleman. So we'll get a motion on the floor and then I'll open the floor for questions. The motion will read that Council received the 2020 Capital Project Update Report for information purposes. And I'll ask for a mover. Councillor Anderson, seconded by Councillor Bateman. Questions from members of council? Councillor Tadman.
Thank you, Mayor. The whole pumping station design, I think we can't leave it to our reports that we got in the past, and it's been going on for several years, is that pumping station certainly needs a lot of work, and I don't think we should put it off. The same with the bypass chamber. and I know it's important, and I want to see the MBBR, but I do not want to poke the bear. We have had a lot of fines, and I think that we were told to get this fixed, and I think we need to get that pumping station. If that doesn't work, you know, a lot of us will be in really bad situations. So I don't know. I don't understand why that's not a priority.
Do you want to speak to that, Mr. Castleman?
Sure, either myself and or Preston. It's, I think one of the concerns is our finances. And our council has indicated that our #1 priority is the MBBR project. Full stop. We've got $8.8 million that has been allocated towards that project. Very significant money for a community of this size. Realistically, we're not going to get any other project beyond the MBBR project completed this year. And from a financial perspective, our recommendation would be complete the design for the pumping station this year as best we can, or as soon as we can, get it to be shovel ready. And in our view, that would be, or staff's view, that would be a 2021 project. So MBBR #1, you know, we're going to get the design done on the pumping station as soon as we can, get it shovel ready for 2000.
Can I ask?
Hang on, I'm going to go to Councillor Bateman, and then I'll come back to you, Councillor Anderson.
Thanks.
Thanks, Mayor. The question I have, my first question, then I'll wait my turn. On the MBBR, I know we applied for funding. Is there any update on the green stream funding for the MBBR? And I know we were originally supposed to apply for funding back over a year ago, and then the election fell in there. So what's the update on the funding?
Well, certainly we've applied for funding, met the guidelines, and there's been no notice at all from either the province or the federal level of government with respect to that green fund. Obviously, the province and the feds are right up to their eyeballs with respect to COVID. When that's going to happen, we have received no notice.
Councillor Anderson?
I don't accept that. I don't accept that. I think you applied a long time ago. We've talked to our MPPs. We were pretty excited that we had the application in on time. I've seen money being handed out all around us. I don't want to mention any communities because that's not fair to them. They're having great success close to us. $5 million was handed out this past week to one of the communities for a project or it's capital items. It seems to be everything's going around us and not landing in Brighton. I don't think it's acceptable to be saying they're not talking to us and we're not hearing back. It's a large project. It's needed. It's something that would highly qualify for funding, and that's how we understood it. And that's why the application went in. It went in as guided. So I think we need to get on the phone with somebody and find out what's going on as far as these funding. There's other projects. There's other things here that are dependent on funding, grant pending, chiller, dehumidifier. You know, what's all happening with all the pending? So I don't know. We need to get we need to be on the map. And how do we do it? Bob?
Sir Tadman?
Thank you again, Mayor. Once again, I say this is as urgent as anything. There's no point in even having the MBBR put in if my toilet and every other resident in the urban areas toilets start to come up in front of us and we cannot use them. So I still think, because I know from the whole studies on that pumping station, it's a mess and it needs to be fixed.
So on both of those issues, I'll come back to you, Doug. I see your hand. I have been in touch with both the MP and the MPP with regard to the grants, and I have been informed that we are top priority but we haven't seen any movement from the organization that releases the grant money from the federal level. So that's where things are being held up at the moment, Councillor Anderson. And the intent is to push a little harder for that green fund money so that we can get moving on the MVBR. And Councillor Tadman, I think we heard that the design for the force main and the pumping station does remain a priority, and the project won't go ahead until 2021, but the design will. And I think it's important that we have these designs in place, because my suspicion is, coming out of this pandemic, we're gonna see some pretty significant infrastructure money to help boost the economy, because I think we're going to be into a pretty serious recession for quite a while, and so it will be good for us to be able to take advantage of those infrastructure monies. But Councillor Tadman, I'm not pushing aside your comments. I think those projects are should be absolute top priorities once the design is done as well.
I hope they're not. May I speak? I hope they're not holding back on this. Like, it was a year ago that we applied for this, and if they're holding back to wait for a great opportunity to come along and say we're going to give a boost to the economy, our economy is dependent on it right now.
Yeah, it was September, Councillor Anderson, that we applied for this money, or September or October, when that fund was opened up. We've been talking about it forever because we knew it was coming, but we couldn't apply until that fund opened up. And could you remind me, Mr. Councilman, when was that? Was that September?
No, it's in January. We made application. I think my recollection is the deadline was January 20th or January 22nd, or late January of 2020.
So that was just 4 months ago. Yeah. So we continue to wait. I don't know when the anticipated announcement would be, but we're not even in May yet, so it's not unusual for these things to take this long. We would like to hear, because we'd like to be able to tender that project and get moving on it. We know we can't do any construction without knowing whether we're going to get that grant or not, because we can't have a shovel in the ground, or we won't be apply for the grant money. So we know that's important too. Councillor LeBlanc.
Yes, Mayor, I got my phone on. When we first started the council in January of 2019, 3 projects came up that were key: building the doctor's facility by the Y, the washrooms at the Y were emergency because people could walk and cut their feet, and the other one was the lift station, because 2/3 of the wastewater flows through that to go to the wastewater treatment plant. We awarded money for it. We also awarded money for a design. It went out to tender, and we approved the contractor way back in April or March of 2019. And after I met with the winning contractor I'd say about a month ago, I asked him where he was on the design, because I wanted to know. He still hadn't received a PO over a year. So it's a priority that we've set, and was set by previous council, by us. But the thing is, this council last year, we said and we voted on to approve the contractor to get that bid in April. Why wasn't that PO sent to that contractor to finish the design on the lift station? We did the doctors. I understand why the washrooms were delayed. I understand that. I agree with that, why it went to go. But the lift station is mandatory to go. Also with the wastewater treatment plant, it's a tertiary treatment, and we got to wait for the funding to do that. But the operators of the wastewater treatment plant, if you look at the report they supplied, they did extremely well, and they had a below average for 365 days of 11 for ammonia, with the regulation being at 14, 15. So they were well below, and they only had 2 exceedances. But what did they do different last year than they did in years before to get it to keep it at those levels? So we got to get some of the projects. The other one also is the brushing. If we're canceling other things, we have drainage problems, culvert problems, and brushing we can do, and the sidewalks, to me, with all the people that are walking, and for accessibility, when Preston said in one of the meetings that we have to do 3 years of 320,000 a year before we meet the minimal standard for accessibility on our sidewalks. Well, this is time we can do it. And I agree with the CAO, we need funding, and I agree with you, Mayor. After my conversation I had today with some of the MPs and the stuff, and the stuff I was on the conference call, funding is going to open after this virus. And people that have shovel-ready projects, they're going to need a lot of stimulus to start this economy going again. Okay, so I'd like to have the answer. Why wasn't the contractor for design for the lift station awarded the contract to design last year when the council voted to give it to the company in April?
Mr. Castleman, are you able to answer that question? If not, I'm fine with that. That's not really what we're here. We're not here to grill staff. So
I'll find out.
Pardon me?
I'll find out.
Thank you. So staff will find out about the process generated for design of the pumping station, the lift station, as you call it, and we'll go from there. Just a reminder that we're not in a council session to grill staff or play gotcha games. If you have a question like that for staff, don't hesitate to send an email. They are still working, even if they're working from home. I'm sure they could get you those answers. But CAO will try to get those answers for us. Councillor Anderson, you had a question.
A different item. I just think I'll bring it up. It's regarding the telephone road. The last council meeting, or one of the last two meetings we had asked for a report back. We were talking about rerouting the truck route for that portion of the road, so the road wouldn't have to be addressed if the county wasn't going to be part of it.
I'm going to cut you off there, Councillor Anderson. I'm going to cut you off, Councillor Anderson, because that would be a question for our solicitor, and my understanding is that Public Works Director was going to, through the CAO's office, was going to get some advice from the solicitor for us. So I suspect that at some point we will hear that advice in a closed session.
Okay.
Okay. Anyone else? Deputy Mayor?
Thank you. I know it's hard to hear some of these projects that are on hold, and I do trust that staff are going to prioritize and do what needs to be done. And as soon as we're able to have a green light, we can get going on these things again. So obviously I'm going to be in favor of approving this.
Thank you. Councillor Rowley?
Thank you, Mayor. Yeah, not wanting to grill staff, but I'd like to go back to the pumping station as well. I know a month or 6 weeks ago, we had a bit of an emergency down at that Harbor Street pumping station. And when I see bypass chamber and valve replacement, I'm wondering if we had that done, would that alleviate concerns that we would have down there, or has the issue been corrected enough that we can get to next year, to 2021, as far as the equipment goes?
Mr. Castleman or Mr. Parkinson, are you able to answer that?
Perhaps Preston.
Through you, Your Worship. The project for the bypass valve chamber is over on the lagoon property, and it's just a valve chamber that will bypass the flow of sewage straight into the lagoon and divert it from the aeration pond. So it's just some gates that are seized in order to do those changes back and forth. So the failure that we had were some bolts that rusted off in the meter chamber outside of the pumping station. That's what caused that failure that we had a few weeks ago, and that's all been remedied, and we put some procedures in place where we can inspect that on a more frequent basis so that it doesn't happen again.
Thank you.
Thank you. To speak to the Deputy Mayor's point, it is difficult to hear when we're pushing projects back. I know this council, all of us, have prided ourselves on the work that we've planned for and the stuff we're getting done. So it's tough to hear when, because of the issues that we're undergoing at the moment, that we've got to push stuff back. I have no doubt that we'd be getting a lot more done if it hadn't been for an unplanned pandemic. No one ever plans for these things, thankfully. Just to clarify though, roads, sidewalks, brushing and ditching, they're still on the table and we're still moving forward with all of those planned projects. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Thank you. So we will continue to get that work done. And of course, other design work as well, because we know it's important to have those things shovel ready. So not just the pumping station and force main, but also other we're working on other plans too, so that we have shovel ready projects in our queue. Is that true?
That's true.
Very well. Okay, anyone else before I call the vote? Councillor LeBlanc?
Yes, Your Honor. That was not a I got you moment. I have sent emails and I have not got replied. So I figured this was my opportunity to ask that question. If I offended anybody, I'm sorry. Okay.
Thank you, sir. Councillor Bateman?
Just more of a clarification question. I fully understand why washrooms aren't being done, but I thought we originally tendered that quite some time ago. I think we only received one tender, and I think there was more to it than that they thought. Has it been retendered, or is going to be retendered if and when COVID-19 allows?
So I'm going to get, is Scott with us?
It looks like he is. Mr. Poole, are you there?
If you don't have it right in front of you, it's okay. I just want to update my notes from the original meeting.
If it's okay, I can speak to it, Your Worship.
Sorry, you go.
Yeah, so we did some more inspections and some more remediation work, and redeveloped the scope of work to be a little more defined, and then we re-tendered it, and the CAO just signed off on that a couple of weeks ago now to have that project done, and then the new restrictions came into effect, which put up a roadblock for us.
Councillor Tadman?
Did you think I wanted to talk to you, Mayor?
I thought you had something to say, Councillor Tadman. I saw your hand
I always have
magically going in front of the screen like this. So.
Well, let me say that I'm very disappointed that nothing's going to be done on the municipal building, but I'll still keep harping.
I was surprised you hadn't mentioned that sooner, actually, Councillor Tadman.
Well, I'm trying to be nice, but it's hard.
There you go. So. All right, so we have a motion to receive this report for information. It's moved by Councillor Anderson. It's seconded by Councillor Bateman. If there's no further discussion, Councillor LeBlanc.
One question, Your Honor, and it's probably for Preston. When they're going to do the tree cutting, are they going to be putting the logs? Because a lot of our citizens have chainsaws. They could use some of these trees for firewood. Is it going to go to a landfill or a place that somebody could use them so they could be of some use in recycling for our citizens?
Parkinson?
Through you, Your Worship. Yes, so in the tender, we'll specify a certain diameter that they have to chip and remove. The rest of the wood would be left onto the side of the road, and then the residents can go clean it up at their leisure. And then generally the larger stumps don't get touched, so we'll have to go around with our loader or the new rubber tire excavator, pick those up and remove them at that time.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Anything else? Madam Clerk, will you please call the vote?
Councillor Ron Anderson,
Yes.
Councillor Mark Bateman,
Yes.
Councillor Doug LeBlanc,
Yes.
Councillor Emily Rowley,
Yes.
Councillor Mary Tadman,
It's really hard to say, but I will say yes. I'm still disappointed.
Deputy Mayor Laura Vink,
Yes.
Mayor Brian Ostrander.
Yes.
And it's carried.
So item 6 has been added to our agenda. It's a roundtable discussion, and as part of that roundtable discussion, our first item is to discuss advisory committees to meet virtually. So this was mentioned by
Mayor,
a couple.
you skipped one of the staff reports. Sorry.
Sometimes I apologize. Oh, well, Madam Clerk, this is your report, so I'll allow you to speak to it.
I don't really have anything else to add. It's just that we've been told that we can use other members of staff for enforcement, for law enforcement. So we are wanting to put that in a bylaw, and it's just temporary. And what the bylaw states is that we are going to try to, or that we would like to appoint Rick Caddick, Fire Chief, and Jeff Ogden, Deputy Fire Chief, for law enforcement.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. So I will need a motion, but the motion will read that council received staff report regarding appointment of temporary municipal bylaw enforcement officers during COVID-19 pandemic, and further that council approved the execution of a bylaw to appoint temporary municipal law enforcement officers during the COVID-19 pandemic. I have a mover, please.
Councillor Rowley.
I have it moved by Councillor Tadman and seconded by Councillor Rowley. And I'll open the floor for discussion or questions. Deputy Mayor.
Thank you. So just so we can get a little bit of clarity, the whole idea behind this is that so that our chief and deputy chief can also enforce some of the regulations during the pandemic. But I think also it's just so that they're able to, and we don't really want, I don't want a strong arm of enforcement going around. I would rather people just be educated as to what they're doing and shouldn't be doing. So just some clarity on those two things, whether that's really what our intention is or not, would be great.
Sure, I'll jump in here. Compliance is absolutely what we're aiming for. We are working with and have discussions with the OPP on a weekly basis with respect to how the pandemic is unfolding and how enforcement is going or not going, what assistance and or what partnerships that we can have with the OPP as it relates to enforcement of the emergency orders. Obviously, we have our bylaw enforcement officer that has been participating and active with the OPP and on the enforcement side. Designating a couple more individuals allows us an opportunity, should it surface, that will allow us to provide some additional assistance. Thus far, enforcement, quite frankly, has been good within the community. We hope that it remains so, that people pay attention with respect to social distancing and heeding the warnings from the Ministry of Health and the province. As I mentioned at the start, we're not here to have a heavy hand. We're here to educate, and we're here to protect our citizens on an ongoing basis. That's our intention. It's not to have a heavy hand and or issue 150 fines. That's not our intention, very clearly.
Councillor Tadman.
Thank you, Mayor. This is sort of related, and I think it would help if Ben could put this out. I've heard from several people that, especially in the two grocery stores, that not many, but a few people have been very rude and have upset some of the cashiers. I think it's a good thing to remind everyone that they're doing a service for us, and they should not be treated rudely and yelled at. And so if we could get that out on the website, I think it'd be very good. And I know that doesn't necessarily pertain to what we're doing here. I think this is a good idea just in case we need more enforcement. Otherwise, now both our chief and deputy chief are staying at home, is that correct? So will they now be going out and about?
I think, sorry, through you, Mr. Mayor, I think our intention is that they'll be used as backup. Our primary enforcement group is through the OPP. Secondary is through our bylaw enforcement officer.
Right.
And tertiary services, if required, would be through the chief and deputy chief. At this point in time, It is not required in my view and in the view of the OPP, but maybe in the future, where, as I said, enforcement has been good within the community, and we hope that continues on such that we, quite frankly, don't need their services. But in the event that we do, we'll have them in place.
Deputy Mayor.
Thank you, and it's good to hear that. I think there's a lot of stuff going around on social media and people talking, and there's a lot of things that we're hearing that are not true. Like you can't have more than 2 people in your car, or if your kids are caught playing with someone else's kids, you'll get a $5,000 fine. So I think it's important that as a municipality, we're actually putting out there what is actually enforceable. If we're going to make a decision on this, those sorts of conversations can come out of this. So I think it's important that we're very clear. There's only a few, items that we are going to be enforcing that are actually truly what the province has put out. So I think I'd like to see that happen as well.
Councillor Cadman.
I totally agree with Deputy Mayor, and that doesn't always happen, but I think we don't want to advertise that we're doing bringing on cops sort of thing, the situation. We just want to let everyone know that we're cognizant of the fact that sometimes bylaws are broken, and as long as people are educated, for the most part, I think everybody is abiding by the rules. So I support what you're saying, Laura, and I think that the more we educate people, the more they follow the instructions. And so far, I don't get out of this house hardly, so you guys will have to tell me what's going on in this town. I'm not allowed by my kids hardly to leave the driveway, so, but from what I hear from telephone conversations is, for the most part, things are going well. So everybody should keep up the good work. And I think the residents should be congratulated for the most part.
And Councillor Tadman, you're not the only one with children in this community saying "Stay home, Mom." I can assure you of.
Okay.
Councillor
I don't
Bateman.
feel lonely then.
Councillor Bateman.
I'm sure this has already been run by Chief Caddick and Deputy Chief Ogden, but I'd love to hear from the chief that he's comfortable and confident if he gets called into this, especially confident that if he does it, it doesn't affect his primary role. But I'd love to hear from him saying thumbs up.
Chief.
Thank you. Through you, Your Worship. Deputy Ogden and I are both, we're in the community. We're responding to, continue to respond to calls for assistance. And so certainly we're going to be there to lend some guidance or education. The CAO and I had this conversation first thing this morning. And yeah, we aren't going to be out patrolling, looking for people, but we will be, we're in the community anyway. And if we see a place where we can assist, we will.
Thank you. And Chief, you and the Deputy Chief are both already Provincial Offences Act officers with certain degrees of enforcement power as it is. And I think so that's why this is a natural transition during the pandemic, but perhaps you could speak to that for council's education as well.
Yes, indeed. Both Deputy Ogden and I are provincial offences officers under the FPPA, the Fire Prevention Protection Act, as assistants to the fire marshal, which we are registered. We are allowed to and can enforce that act and lay charges and what have you around that, and any other fire acts such as the open air burning policy and that we have approved through provincial government, the different regulations around that. So we do have some powers already, but this just adds to it when it comes to municipal bylaw and that of the emergency management techniques.
Thank you, Chief. Any other questions or comments from members of council? Councillor LeBlanc.
Through you, Your Honor, for Chief Caddick, on the burn barrels, is that a bylaw or is it a fire marshal's issue that you're on there? Because I know you responded a few times that people were burning their garbage in the burn barrel instead of paying the extra $1 bag tag. So would this be part of the bylaw or the Firearms Act? Firearms Act. Thank you.
Your microphone's muted, Chief.
Through you, Your Worship, to Councillor LeBlanc. The use of burn barrels is covered through our open air burning bylaw. So it is a municipal bylaw. Burn barrels are only allowed to be used outside the limits, if you will, of the former town of Brighton. So out in the rural area, they can be used. No one at any location is allowed to burn garbage or any of the sort. It is simply clean burning wood only. And you know, that's the open air burning bylaw. So it's not under the Fire Prevention Protection Act, the FPPA. It's under our municipal bylaw.
Thank you.
Any other questions or comments from members of council? Madam Clerk, will you please call the vote?
Councillor Ron Anderson,
Yes.
Councillor Mark Bateman,
Yes.
Councillor Doug LeBlanc,
Yes.
Councillor Emily Rowley,
Yes.
Councillor Mary Tadman,
Yes.
Deputy Mayor Laura Vank,
Yes.
Mayor Brian Ostrander.
Yes.
It's carried.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. So now we'll move into the roundtable discussion, and thank you for catching that, Candace. I appreciate it. Advisory committees to meet virtually. So I will open the floor for council's discussion, and perhaps we'll get staff's input as well on how we can manage this if we decide to go forward. Members of council, how would you like to proceed with regard to advisory committees? Councillor Tadman.
Thank you, Mayor. I would like to hear from staff how they suggest we go forward before I make any suggestions, if that's okay.
That's fine with me. Mr. Castleman or Madam Clerk, do either of you have any comments or suggestions?
From an IT standpoint, I'm going to leave it up to the clerk. Having said that, there are some committees that perhaps could meet virtually, dependent upon our decision with respect to community events. So as an example, if our decision is to carry on with Applefest and or carry on with certain community events, it takes time to plan ahead. And these people need to be meeting virtually or otherwise in order to plan ahead. If they're not meeting and not talking to each other with respect to these events, there's no point of having them, because it doesn't happen overnight. There's a long lead time associated with getting it ready for 10,000 people to come and visit us during an Applefest. It doesn't happen within a week or 10 days. It takes time. So those would be the only two that I could think of off the top of my head. And as far as the IT side of that, I'll pass that back to the clerk.
Any comments, Madam Clerk?
Just the fact that I'm not IT, so I have a really hard time doing this. Actually, I've been having Randy help me do all these Zoom meetings, make sure that we're doing it properly. So we would have to do the same type of meetings for the committee meetings as we're doing for council right now. So there will be an added cost because I would need help with that, especially now that I'm losing Patrick.
Exactly.
Comments from members of the council? Councillor Tadman.
Thank you once again, Mayor. I think out of courtesy to all these different committees that we need to at least meet once and update each one of the members on the committees and let the committees decide themselves what their priorities would be during this time. So, and I certainly think it will be worth the money for Candace to have Randy help her through doing however we want to set that up virtually. But they're all sitting at a standstill. They don't hear what we hear here. And I think in all fairness, they need to know that not necessarily when they'll be able to meet again, but at least to know that we do support these committees. And but because of the legislation right now, we can't necessarily meet together, but I think we can do something virtually.
Can I ask a question?
Deputy Mayor?
Thank you. First of all, I think we kind of have to decide what committees maybe need to meet. I don't think it's a good idea to leave it up to the committees, sorry Mary, to decide what priorities are. I think we have to be careful to make sure that we're prioritizing with the guidance from staff as far as what we should and shouldn't be doing right now. There's certain committees that probably do need to meet just to have a discussion, decide, okay, we're just going to put what we're putting on hold, what we're not putting on hold, and that sort of thing. And there may be other committees that actually don't need to meet right now, like, you know, the Heritage Committee. You know, these are a great group of people, but they are older. I don't think they even want to meet. The technology might be difficult. I don't know that, but there's nothing really that we can do right now on the Heritage Committee. There's no projects that we can continue on with right now. But there might be other committees like community events who do need to have a bit of a discussion maybe, or like I said, AppleFest as well. So I don't know if we have a list or if we can put together a list, or we want to do that right now. As far as who needs to meet virtually, that would be kind of where I'm at on this. So if anyone's able to speak to that, or anyone has any ideas, that would be helpful.
Councillor Anderson.
Your worship, can they not have a conference call and that would qualify, or does it have to be virtual?
That's what we're talking about. Well, that's a virtual meeting would be by conference or the way we're doing it now.
Well, a conference call would be far, use the word, easier than setting up what we're doing today, I would think. You just get a line, everybody dials in, and away you go.
So if we do, I mean, we're going to set it up generically. So if we say, yes, you can meet virtually, then the clerk would send out a link, and that link would almost always includes a telephone conference option, or at least that's been my experience. Madam Clerk, could you chime in there and just let me know if that's true with the technology we're using?
Yes. The only problem that we come up with is the fact that all committees are public meetings. So the public always has the ability to attend any of these committee meetings at any time. So we would have to have them open to the public. So it'd have to be the same format as what we are doing right now. We could do a telephone conference, but it would still need to be done through Zoom. So maybe they may not be able to, we may not be able to see them visually, but we would be able to hear them. But we definitely have to have it live streamed so that the members of the public can view them if they want to.
All right.
Councillor Rowley.
Thank you, Mayor. I think as well, I think we need to decide which committees should meet. I'm on board with Laura as far as the community events. We certainly need to do something in AppleFest. I'm wondering if the other committees, the members, so that they're not kept in the dark as to they know what's going on with their committee, that there could be an email, some kind of letter, whether it comes from the clerk or whichever staff member would be looking after those committees. I know, Candace, you're going to be busy with Patrick not being here, but I think there could be some kind of email sent so that, like I said, those committee members, whether they have a lot of access to the internet or whatever, that they could at least get an email to say why they're not meeting, and maybe an update as to maybe when it will happen again.
Councillor LeBlanc.
Through you, Mayor, since we're going to be short-staffed with the clerk and them on these committee meetings, I agree with the Deputy Mayor. We should be selective on the ones we take, because with this pandemic, there's going to be a lot of extra work and stuff being done. So, and we also talked about in one of our council meetings that we would want staff to be at every one of our committee meetings so that we have continuity and everything would go. So I agree with the Deputy Mayor that we should limit the ones that we do, so we don't put on undue burden onto just one staff that we're going to have in the clerk's office because Patrick is leaving, until we hire somebody and get some of this stuff done. That's my point of view. So, thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Tadman.
I just want to make it clear to the Deputy Mayor also that I in no way was suggesting that they would make suggestions and carry through with them. It was more if they had ideas that they would like to bring forward so that staff could consider whether they could even work on that. I'm thinking of something like the digital archives. There's some things that they can still do as long as they have permission to do them. I think accessibility should meet just because there is a lot of needs in this community. I do not like the idea of us choosing what's important and what's not. I think that that's a slippery slope that I won't go down because I think every committee is important in their own way. And all we seem to be talking about that it's community events and Applefest that is important, but all these committees are important and they all add great value to this community. So if we're not going to consider them all, I will not be supporting this.
Deputy Mayor.
Thank you. Yeah, actually, I understand your point. I still think there are a few committees that maybe don't need to meet because they can't do anything right now, but we certainly need to look at some of these committees. And yet it is difficult because they do have to be put out exactly the way we're doing these meetings. We certainly probably can't meet monthly, you know, depending on how long this goes on. But I don't know if we should open it up to all committees. I just don't know that that's a good idea. But you brought up a good point, Mary. I understand and I agree. Accessibility, there certainly are reasons for that. The digital archives could still be continuing on with some of the work that they're doing. Some of these committees are kind of working action committees that are either they're planning events or they're just continually working behind the scenes doing work for the community and for Brighton. So if they don't have to stop, then of course we don't want to. I guess I'm looking for some guidance. Do we have an idea of a list of you know, for myself, I'm on Applefest and I'm on Heritage. I'm not sure Heritage needs to meet, but maybe I shouldn't be making that decision. I don't know.
I wonder if I could offer that the clerk and maybe Mrs. Selman get together and go through the list of committees and reach out to the chairs of each committee and ask the committee chair what's your feeling in terms of the need to meet or the want to not meet, depending on how they go. And maybe, Madam Clerk, you could put together a report for the May 4th meeting, offering suggestions of what committees we would allow for, or in fact, just allow for virtual meetings, but allow the chairs to call those meetings in coordination with the clerk's office, understanding that you have other work to do and that your work is now impacted by a lack of a deputy clerk. Councillor Tadman.
Thank you, Mayor. My biggest concern at this moment is they haven't met for a long time. We have incredible volunteers. Some of them, well, most of them get the stipend, but they put in a lot more work than what they get back in a stipend. And I'm just afraid that people are going to walk away and say, you know, what's the point? I haven't heard from the councillors. I haven't heard from staff. I'm moving on. I've offered to work and they don't seem to have any value in me. And I could see people doing that. And just the whole thing of not meeting every once in a while, you kind of forget, I guess, what your obligations are on committees. So I think a fresh, whatever way we're going to move forward, we need to be in contact with every committee, not just a few.
Right. Councillor Anderson.
Exactly. I think we just need to contact the chairs or the committees and let them come back with the feedback. And it's not a question of we are ignoring them or missing them. And I don't think they're walking away from anything. I think they know the situation. I think we just, after this meeting, I think they realize we haven't got together very often. And now we're getting down to business. And we're there to support them. So that's our new candidate, our new counselor.
Thank you. Deputy Mayor, you had a comment.
I agree. Touching base with all the committees.
Hang on for a sec. Councillor Anderson, can I get you to
Yeah,
mute?
yeah.
Yeah, thank you.
Just getting in touch with all the committees is a really good idea. Earlier we were talking about Applefest, and that's why I keep bringing up Applefest, because it was suggested that we have that conversation about where we think if we can even pull this off at this point or not, and report back to council. In order to do that, we would need to be allowed to have a virtual meeting. And that's the only reason why I keep bringing that up, but I agree that all the committees are important, and I see the volunteers, the work that the volunteers do. And you know, they're amazing people, and we do need to kind of contact them, but I think they do understand what's going on. And you know, we're all kind of, this is all new, we don't know what we're doing, we don't know how long it's going to last, but let's make some contact with them.
Perfect. So by motion, we did say committees will not meet for the month of April. So are we all comfortable with getting a report at the May 4th council meeting to help resolve this issue? Does that make sense to everyone?
Yeah.
Yeah? Yeah. Madam Clerk?
In the meantime, I can send out a letter or emails to the members of the committees, just letting them know that, you know, we're on standstill for the month of April still, that after the May 4th meeting, that I'll let them know what's going to happen from there, from going forward, just to keep them up to date.
Yep, very well. Thank you. Councillor Rowley.
Thank you again, Mayor. Just want to kind of ask Laura. Laura, what do you think? Do you think we can wait till May as far as Applefest goes? I know with community events, we can certainly put things on hold. I can speak with the chair about that as to how we move that forward. But do you think if we wait till into May that we're almost leaving this a little bit too late?
Can I answer that?
Please.
Yeah, I think at this point, even if we're waiting till May, pulling off Applefest would be very difficult, the planning part of it. We do need to make a decision at one point. So if we're going to wait to May, we're going to wait to May to decide whether committees can even meet. Is that what we're deciding? So if Applefest can't even meet until May to decide whether or not they can pull this off, we're pushing it so far ahead, I'm not sure we're going to be able to.
So as of right now, no committees are to meet until May. Like, everyone's shut down through the month of April. So starting May 1, if committees can figure out how to coordinate through the clerk's office, I suppose they could. The chair could call a meeting. We haven't shut anybody down past April 30th.
So in essence, then Applefest could meet virtually before we meet again, or before, or whatever, to discuss, you know, kind of where we're at.
In theory, any of our committees could meet on May 1st or 2nd or whatever. I don't know what day of the week those are. I'm thinking it's.
I know, but in theory we can't all, because that would be
right.
You know what I mean? Like the clerk can't handle that. So that's why we're kind of talking in circles.
But I think that if there was a dire need for a committee to meet, like Applefest, before the end of April, then we could simply put a motion on the floor today that would allow Applefest to meet at any time with coordination of the clerk's office. I just wouldn't want to open that up to everyone until we have the clerk with a comfortable idea of how this is going to work, and until we have all the chairs, you know, on board with whether or not they need to meet, and if so, how to coordinate that. But you know, you're the chair of Applefest, so it's a bit of a different scenario.
Yeah, and I think the difference here is that Applefest, if we decide to cancel Applefest, we're done for the season. It's not like we can pick up in August and start doing what we've been doing, whereas the other committees can do that. They can continue on whenever. But we're kind of making a decision, and then we're done for the year. Unless we can come up with some sort of other festival, but even that we couldn't do again until later on, possibly some small version of it. But I think that's just throughout the reason why AppleFest keeps coming up, and people keep asking me what we're doing. They want to know if AppleFest is going to be on or not.
Mr. Miller?
Just I'm looking at the calendar. May 1st is a Friday, so we
Right.
have to meet probably the last week of April, which would be next week, in order to make a discussion and make some decisions as far as timing goes.
Councilor Rowley.
Thank you. I would, as sitting on AppleFest with the deputy mayor, the sooner that we can have a discussion as to how it's going to look, whether we totally drop it for this year or do something, like ideas can come out of the meeting later on, that's for sure. But my concern is the same thing. Last year we were behind the 8 ball when we started in March, and now we're 2 months farther into the calendar year. If it's going to go, it's going to go. I'm just not sure where it's going to go, but I really do think that we need to make a decision whether to kind of stop up and move on, or come up with something. But I think we need to see what our committee thinks as well.
Madam Clerk?
I did do a small poll myself of all the other municipalities and what they're doing with their big events that they have like this, because we're not the only one that has this type of event, and they've canceled them. Even the ones that are later in the year, like ours in September, but they have canceled them all just because of the planning and not being and like, you don't know about if people are going to want to get together after we've come out of this COVID, even, you know what I mean? Like, it may take some time before anybody feels comfortable about getting out there and getting involved. So a lot of municipalities have canceled their events.
Thank you. Deputy Mayor?
On that note, then yes, I would like to be able to call a meeting with AppleFest before the end of April, so we can just have a discussion, so we all understand, we're all on the same page. It's not a shock to them. I wouldn't want council to make a decision and then go, hey, they didn't even talk to us. And we can talk about, ulterior plans if something happens earlier, or if we're able to do something. But so if you had made can I put that motion on the floor? We already have a motion on the floor. No,
We don't have a motion on the floor. We're just have an open discussion about this right now. If you do put a motion on the floor, may I suggest that it have to do with permitting AppleFest to have a virtual meeting and directing staff to provide a report on other advisory committee meetings to meet virtually for the May 4th meeting.
Yes, you can make that suggestion.
There you go.
I'll second that
I would
motion.
second it.
All right.
Mary's
So
got it.
hang on, I'll read it, and then I'll open the floor for discussion.
Thank
So
you.
it's moved by the Deputy Mayor, seconded by Councilor Rowley. The council permits the AppleFest committee to meet virtually, and further that council directs staff to report on virtual meetings for advisory committee meetings on May 4th. Does that make sense? Councilor Tadman?
Thank you. I'm pushing again to make sure that all the committees are contacting one way or another. A lot has been talked about what's going to happen in the urban, but what about the rural advisory for one? I think that those people need to be aware what is going to be going on with ditching and brushing and roads and everything. So, they have no way of coming to a meeting to find that out. They can't go to the rural advisory meetings. So I think somehow we got to work out how we're going to communicate to the rural people too.
And Madam Clerk, you've said that you will reach out to all the chairs. Yeah, okay. So that's a good first step, and then we'll decide on May 4th how we will allow virtual committee meetings to move forward through the pandemic. I don't know if that answers your question though, Councilor Tadman. You're worried about communication into the rural area. So Mr. Hagerman, I'll let you speak to that.
I was just going to make the point very simply that back the middle of March now, it was communicated that all committee meetings were canceled for March and April. So all of the members should have that communication. That was put on all of our original communications
that was put on the household flyers that got to each household by print communication. And it's been online for, 6 weeks now. So those committee members should have been aware that they would not have a meeting until at least the start of May. Just wanted to make that point.
Councillor Cadman.
Thank you again, Mayor, and thank you, Ben. I know that happened in March, and now we're almost going into May. I think that they deserve an update, all the committees. So that's my argument.
And I think that will be done through the clerk's office to the chairs of the committees, and it would be my hope that the chairs will communicate to their committee members. And Candace, I trust that you'll encourage that. Councillor Tadman.
I'm back again.
Yes.
Don't you just love me? Anyways.
Carry on.
Okay, you won't commit. I really do believe that this is important, but I don't want to put all the work on Candace. And I don't know how busy Ben is. I'm not there. I'm not allowed out of here, so how can I tell? But anyways, could not Ben reach out to those people and bring back a report for us?
I think that what we'll do is we'll let staff figure out how best to organize the communication of this, because Mr. Hagerman doesn't report to us.
Absolutely not, but I always like to make little suggestions.
Understood. Councillor LeBlanc. Doug, your microphone's muted.
Thank you very much for reminding me. No, I'm listening. This is for the deputy mayor that sits on the Applefest. Has anybody reached out to Mrs. Waterhouse to see how she feels, what she can do, what she can design, or get going before this? And I didn't know if she was the chair of the Applefest. I don't know who sits as the chair either.
The deputy mayor is the chair. Deputy mayor?
Well, as of things are, we're not allowed to meet, so we can't have those conversations. We did have an email go around, just everyone started piping up about what they could do or couldn't do. And basically I said, we just have to kind of put a pin in it for now until the council decides what we're going to do, because we were not to meet until the end of April. So I would like to have a meeting so that we can have a discussion, and then we can give a little report back by way of minutes back to council.
Anyone else? Councillor Anderson?
I think we talked this through pretty well. I think it's down to communication, and I think Laura knows what she's got to do, and I think she should have a meeting next week, and we'll get on with it.
Very well. So we have a motion on the floor. If there's no further discussion, Madam Clerk, will you please call the vote?
Councillor Ron Anderson?
Yes.
Councillor Mark Bateman?
Yes.
Councillor Doug LeBlanc?
Yes.
Councillor Emily Rowley?
Yes.
Councillor Mary Tadman?
Yes.
Deputy Mayor Laura Vink?
Yes.
Mayor Brian Ostrander?
Yes.
Carried.
Thank you. So now staff implications concerning COVID-19. I guess what I'd like to do is go around to the directors and just ask the directors, or Mr. Castleman, if you'd rather do it, just hit the highlights of things that are affecting your departments, what council might be able to do to help, if anything, or just provide some sort of daily highlights and bring council up to speed as to what's happened over the last, I don't know, where are we, 6 weeks in now? Something like that anyway. Mr. Castleman?
I'm just going to kick it off, and then I'm going to hand it off to the individual department heads. Over the course of the last 6 weeks or so, we've put in place a business continuity plan, and we've also put in place a directive to work from home and what the guidelines are in that regard. We're reviewing those on a weekly basis. New information comes our way all the time, and we've had to adjust. So the reality is that I'm going to say off the top of my head, we have 2/3 of our staff working from home or have been working from home over the course of the last little bit. So certainly a skeleton staff within the various offices and/or buildings across the municipality. So I'm going to stop there and just hand it off to the individual department heads, and they can talk to you a little bit about what has been occurring in their individual departments. So, Mr. Preston, how would you like to start?
Thanks, Bob. Through you, Your Worship. In our water department, we've taken precautions to keep staff separated. Same with the wastewater department. We're keeping them working out of different buildings so that they're not exposed to each other. As far as roads go, today is the first day after a month that we've had all road staff in because we've rented some equipment so that we can start ditching. The winter is behind us, so that we're now summarizing our trucks, getting the plows off and getting the mats in on the chains so that we can haul material. So we're going to start ditching tomorrow on some of the smaller projects, start the surface treating program, getting our tenders out so that we can do the pulverizing and the culvert replacements, that sort of thing, to prep all the work. In the office though, as many people as possible are working from home. The office is still closed to the public, as you all know, and we've upped our sanitation of all the buildings. We've implemented protocols just for our half tons and our large trucks so that everybody is assigned a vehicle, and there's a cleaning protocol we go through at the end of the week. So overall, the staff are holding up fairly well. It's a trying time for all of us, as we're all aware, as we're into this now 6 weeks. For the most part, Public Works, we're hanging in there, and the guys are all, the whole team's doing an excellent job.
Thank you. Are there any questions for Mr. Parkinson before we carry on what he's had to say? Anyone? Mr. Bateman, Councillor Bateman?
I was just going to ask if summer students have started, or are we getting summer students this year?
So I'm going to jump in there. And once we get around to Linda, what I've asked her to do over the course of the last week or so is try and get an assessment of what our cash flow requirements are on a go-forward basis. Obviously, we have many of our facilities shut down, and there's an impact on the revenue side. So I'm trying to get ahead of it as quickly as I can to try and understand what mitigation measures that we need to put in place or not. Certainly, the students, the majority of students will be delayed at best. So we have 2 that will be starting in GIS on the date that they were indicated to start, which I think is May 4. The remainder of students have been delayed from a May 4 start to June 1st. And subject to what the pandemic may hold. Certainly, we're looking at other staff, other seasonal staff, and putting in place some mitigation measures to try and mitigate the expense side to offset the loss in revenues.
As a quick follow-up to that, Mr. Castleman, do we receive a summer jobs grant for students?
I'm going to let Linda jump in.
Hi, sorry about that. Yes, we have applied for Canada's summer grant, summer jobs grant, but we haven't had any notification on it yet. We did receive a memorandum from the federal government last week that advised us that they were going to extend the program all the way through to February 2021. So perhaps Canada Summer Grants can be used for co-op students in the fall term if we can't utilize students this summer. We have to be respectful of the equipment that we have, obviously, and whether we can fit students into our current program with the social distancing that's in place, I think is our largest concern with that. But we haven't had notification yet on that grant.
Thank you. We'll come back to you. Any other questions for Mr. Parkinson? Councilor LeBlanc.
Make sure I'm off. Okay, I'm off. It's more of a compliment, Mayor, for the roads crew getting ahead of the potholes. I've heard a lot of comments from the people in the rural community that they really appreciate that they've been out there doing it, and as quick as they can. I know they were divided crews, separate trucks, but this year compared to last year is a big difference. So I just want to say thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions for Mr. Parkinson? Preston, if I can, we talked about an urban roads schedule or plan and a ditching and brushing plan for what roads would be done year after year. You provided a rural roads plan out 7 years, and I'm just curious when you think we'll have the urban roads plan and the brushing and ditching plan for council's information.
The brushing and ditching plan can likely come in May, but the larger plan of the urban reconstruction with bridge work, it will likely take a little bit longer because we're down a staff member in the engineering department right now. So that could be more June, maybe the end of June for the urban reconstruction plan.
Thank you, appreciate that. Anyone else? Councilor Tadman?
I did escape without my kids catching me, and I drove up along Bay Street, and I'm just wondering, will the staff be doing that barrier that they put after the rocks and closer to the road? Because I'm always concerned that road's going to get washed out. We still don't know if we're going to have as bad a flood this year. I'm hoping we don't, but will we be prepared in time to have that extra barrier there? Because didn't we last year buy some kind of a gadget that fills up a few bags at a time? I sort of saw it working. Maybe Preston could answer that.
Through you, Your Worship. Yes, Bay Street, I've applied for a permit from Lower Trent. We've conducted the work already. We've reinstated all the large stone from the marina all the way around to Lambton Street to protect that shore, and we're currently just watching the water levels when it starts to rise, and if we're sure that things are going to get worse, then we're going to instate the wall, the sandbag wall along that frontage to protect the roadway. And the devices we used to fill the sandbags last year were we converted the sandplow trucks over to use the conveyor system, so they go into a sandbag to save all the shoveling and whatnot. So yeah, we have 3 trucks equipped for that, so it won't take us long to build that wall when time requires.
Go ahead.
Am I the go ahead?
You are.
Thank you. I just wanted to thank all the people that have been sandbagging, and I know it's very much appreciated down around here, and I'm sure other places too. And I do believe Councillor Bateman's been doing a lot of that sandbagging, and I do believe that I heard that Councillor LeBlanc takes a lot of tea, and I don't know whether there's anything in the tea, but I know he takes tea to them. And a lot of people really appreciate that. So whoever deserves kudos, kudos to you.
Well, good work, guys. Council or Deputy Mayor, go ahead.
Thank you. And just a note that, again, so we haven't met for a little while, but every week the emergency control group is meeting, and we discuss all of this stuff every week. Staff, I've been impressed with staff. They're keeping up on all this, checking the water levels, and have a handle on what needs to be done and when. And it's hard when we don't hear all this, but it's been really good to be able to be part of that and know that they're on top of everything, and I really appreciate it.
Councillor Tadman.
I'm back again. That's all well and good, Deputy Mayor and Mayor, but we don't hear it as councillors. And when people ask us questions, we have no no way of telling them what's going on. So I speak for myself, but probably for all councillors, I think they'd like to hear what goes on at those meetings.
I will redouble my efforts on the updates by email to include all of that information for everybody.
Thank you. Or you could even assign it to your deputy mayor, some of it.
Then she would simply be doing what I've been doing, so that's fine. I think I can manage.
Good.
So unless you have a plan as to who's next, Mr. Castleman, I'm going to go over to Ms. Whitfield.
Thank you. So finance department has been busy through all of this distancing that we've been doing. We're alternating 2 staff teams. So staff have laptops at home, and so they work from home a couple days a week, and they work in the office a couple or 3 days a week. We've been working on audit. It's coming to a close now. We've pretty much answered all of their questions and given them all of the information. We're just waiting on a couple of little things, and I believe they're going to reach out to Linda Selman to have a discussion with you, Mayor Ostrander, and with Mr. Castleman. Water bills were put in the mail about a week and a half ago, and we did send out a slip or information on the high school project with that on behalf of the high school. County tax rates are now set, so next up is our tax rate bylaw, and we'll be bringing that to council at the beginning of May. One of the things that we have to consider when we bring that bylaw to council is what staff's recommendations are going to be with respect to the tax due date for the final billing. We usually have a final billing due date of end of July and end of September, but in discussions with the other treasurers, we may recommend extending that based on the fact that the province has extended the education portion of the levy. And I have been looking at, and will continue to look at our actuals in comparison to a prior year and to our budget. The first quarter didn't look that much different. But remember that it was at the end of that first quarter that we started doing the closures. And so I fully expect our second and third quarters are going to see some loss in revenue. And so I'll bring a report back at the beginning of May once I've had the time to finish my analysis and then discuss with the CAO.
Thank you. Any questions for the CFO? Councillor LeBlanc?
Thank you. Make sure I'm on. Through you, Mayor, for the CFO, I noticed, I don't know if you're with this, but the for permits, I noticed compared from 2019 to 2020, the first quarter we were up by 300 to 400%. Does that help you in any way?
Permits for
housing, buildings, building permits and stuff. If that's part of your department, and money coming in, revenues coming in.
Yeah, I haven't noticed a large increase in the revenues for building permits right now. And I did reach out to our CBO today, so I'm hoping to get more information. Perhaps there was more revenue coming in April.
Councillor Cadman.
Thank you, Mayor, through you to Linda. It's my understanding that we can't run a municipality in the red. Is that correct?
Correct.
And also it's my understanding that there has been some talk that the next phase of funding that comes out from both the feds and the province may be considering passing a little dough to the municipalities. But I don't think we can count on that. So some of the projects that we're not doing is going to be a buffer for us. And I know you'll be watching to see that at the end of the year, we're not going to be in the red. but we do have some pretty good reserves in case. So I think the news should go out that we're doing okay at this point anyways. We're being very frugal. Is that correct?
Through you, Mayor Ostrander. Council should rest assured that the municipality is in good financial position. Your auditors tell you that each year, and they will be telling you that again this year. The municipality is fortunate in the fact that we have a line of credit that we haven't used in a number of years, but is still there. That facility is still there. You have some flexibility in your internal loan payments. If we were getting into a little bit of a bind, maybe we would bring to council a recommendation to lower our internal loan payments in 2020 to offset some of the deficits if we think that we're going down that road. If you're not providing programming, if you're not providing community center rentals, if you're not providing, you know, ball field rentals, that type of thing, there will be less maintenance and less staff time that are applied to those. So there's a lot of considerations. When your revenues go down, so do your expenditures in some respects. Hydro would be lower in buildings that are not, you know, open to the public and not using as many lights and that type of thing. So there are some considerations. I'm just not seeing it in the actuals yet. I think that we'll see more in the second quarter as we go through, and I think that council should, at the same time, rest assured that we're in a good financial position in this municipality, and we don't have the same worries as others. And as we're also collecting all of our COVID expenses, so anything that we are, any additional expenses that we're attributing to the COVID-19 pandemic, we're going to collect that information in a single account that will allow us to advise the province and advise the federal government what the implications of this pandemic is for our municipality.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Seeing none, we'll move on to Mr. Miller.
Afternoon. As Linda was saying, we've been lucky as far as the closings go. We only missed a week of hockey, and it was near the end of the year, so we weren't fully rented anyways. And same as the community center, we only missed 1 week in March. So I think any changes, significant changes, revenues will be felt the second quarter, obviously, because we won't be able to have any revenues with our facilities. But having said that, we've been busy. We have full complement of staff this week, starting this week, and each staff member has a vehicle. So we're out busy in the parks, getting the parks cleaned up with brush and whatnot. We've been busy cutting trees. We've had quite a few ash trees that have died up at the cemetery. So we've been up there cutting trees and getting that ready. As well, we're carrying on with our capital projects, getting them underway. And we're doing all we can, you know, when the time comes to have the parks open and the green spaces, that they'll be safe and ready to go for the public to use. And that's pretty much where we're at. Students are pretty much used primarily for the bookings, like the ball diamonds, to groom them, and the soccer fields and whatnot. If those operations are running this summer, then you know, we're still doing grass. I mean, the grass is starting to grow. We've been cutting actually a couple of spots today. So, you know, it's kind of business as usual for us from an operations standpoint that way, maintenance and that. But it's going to be the fields that are going to be the biggest. The operations for bookings are going to be the biggest change that we have.
Thank you. Questions for Mr. Miller? So I saw someone's hand and then you switched spots on me. There you go. Councillor Bateman.
I was just going to say that the revenues will be impacted if this continues on, because I think Jim mentioned there was a few weddings booked in deposits paid for, that we're probably getting to the period where that's going to be refunded shortly.
Yes, but again, there'd be less of a cost for hydro, for staffing, and stuff like that. So I mean, yeah, there will be a loss, but I mean, again, expenses won't be as much either.
Councillor LeBlanc.
Yes, through you, Mayor, to Jim. I want to thank you very much for answering back those emails to the citizens on cleaning up the park and your quick response on that. My question to you is that the students that you use, are they the same students that the DBIA uses for doing their flower pots for beautification of Brighton? Is that going to go on this summer? You know?
Well, I think we're definitely planning on, when I talk to the DBIA, unless it's changed, we're looking at still putting hanging baskets and planters out. So that's not going to change, even the flowers. I've talked to our gardener, like Steve at Zula, and we're going to do what we can. We've been lucky that the last couple of years we've put a lot of our pots are the reservoir type, so we can water them, go every other day or every second day or third day in some cases, as far as watering goes. So I think we should be in fairly good shape that way.
One more question.
Wait, hang on. Councillor Rowley might want to chime in on the DBIA stuff. Go ahead.
Yes, exactly. Thank you, Mayor. I should just say some of the DBIA met today informally, virtually as well. And just to give an update, yes, planters are coming. The flowers are coming. I think all end of April, mid-May. Street should be spruced up again a little bit, that's for sure. So yeah, from the DBIA, that stuff will still be moving ahead. There might be a delay in some delivery of some new planters, but everything as far as the streetscape goes is going on for normal.
Thank you. Councillor LeBlanc, I'll come back to you. You have another question, I think, but Councillor Anderson also had a question. Councillor Anderson?
Just, am I on there?
You are.
The skateboard park, we probably talked about it an hour ago, but that's going to be delayed now. The tenders are out, or going out, and that'll have to be delayed as well.
Well, yeah, I mean, the tenders are out. It closes May 14th. We're using bids and tenders, that site, so it pretty much looks after everything for us. We put a couple of addendums out, basically letting them know that they have to put their submit their bids with that website, and you know, we're looking to at least have it awarded in May. So it's just going to be a matter of when the successful contractor is able to start working on it. It's not an essential service, the skateboard park, so that's we're at the mercy of the province. It's like the dog park, the fencing companies, they are not essential services. We can get the driveway done, which we plan on doing in short order, but the fencing is going to have to wait until they're able to work.
Okay.
Councillor LeBlanc, back to you.
Well, probably to Mayor, to Jim, probably my question is probably not essential, but you know, it's with me, the Gosport dock, the one that had the rolling wheels, and we were going to replace that this year. Is that one going to be replaced this year? Or you probably already have it done?
We're working on it right now as we speak to get some pricing to replace that with a removable aluminum dock.
Thank you.
Thank you, Jim. If there's nothing further for Mr. Miller, we're going to go on to Ms. Doran.
Okay, a little update. We are now issuing marriage licenses again through the ORG. We were mandated that we had to do so. We had to come up with some type of plan in order to do that. So we've are accepting electronic payments and accepting all the documents electronically. We've got a plan in place. Burial permits. The cemetery is open again. The ORG is allowing us to accept electronic documents from the coroner and from the funeral directors. Lottery licenses, we're going to extend the deadlines on those. I'm not sure for how long, but we'll see what happens. And then a quick question or a quick comment, planning meetings. We can have virtual planning meetings as well or incorporate those. However, yeah, Amanda from DM Wells has let us know that at this point, they're not aware of any other municipalities in the area that are proceeding with virtual public meetings or statutory public meetings for all planning items. That is a requirement. So I'm not sure what council wants to do there, but that's up for discussion as well.
Is there any questions or comments, members of council, on that? Councillor Bateman?
I was just going to ask Candace, I spoke to Patrick already, but if you can pass on my best wishes and gratitude for his work at the municipality.
Thank you. Anyone else? Councillor LeBlanc?
Yes, on the planning meetings, because to Candace, through you, Mayor, on the planning meetings, is there any way we could have a planning meeting that we social distance it, like we use an arena or something if they got to be done, so people can get their building permits and get things done, so it doesn't delay it? Because I know a lot of people wait for these issues for building permits and stuff to get it done. Is there any way you can do it with everybody being distanced so you can still have a public meeting? I know that our building is cramped, but maybe not there. I'm just throwing it out there.
We just heard that we can hold them virtually. So if that's the road we want to go down, then we can. Now that said, the province has said that we don't have to adhere to any of the deadlines at the moment, so we're able to push everything back. My concern with that is that we may have some planning wishes in the works that we should be considering so that work can start as soon as all the restrictions are lifted. And I think that would be beneficial to our local economy if we can help move those things forward. So it is up to council. If council wants to provide direction to the clerk's office that that's the route we want to go down, Candace and Randy and friends will figure out how to do that. Deputy Mayor?
Is that me?
So,
sorry.
My turn, Mary.
Okay.
If there is definitely a need for us to have a planning meeting, now planning has nothing to do with issuing of building permits, it's a different thing, just to be clear. But if we do need to have some planning meetings or a planning meeting, I'm all for us moving ahead with that virtually if we need to. I don't want, our economy is going to be affected by this enough. I don't want us to make that worse. I want us to keep moving so that when things change, that any planning projects can continue along as they were. So that's my opinion. I don't know if you need a motion at this point or.
No, we'll just have a little discussion here and see what we want to do. Councillor Tadman?
I totally agree with Deputy Mayor Bink, and I think we should get right at it because once things open up again, we want to be ready. We talk about shovel ready. These people want to get back to work and need to get back to work. That's their income and all the workers that work for these developers and builders. So if there's any way we can assist in moving things forward, I think we should do it. So I would put a motion forward, or someone else can put it forward and I'll second it. But I think we need to move forward with a virtual meeting. And then we can talk about how we can move forward from the virtual meeting to how we can help. But we definitely need our planner there to help us with the guidelines that the province has given us at this point.
Thank you. Councillor Bateman, did I see your hand?
Yeah, I was just going to ask with the deadlines extended by the province, that's for the municipality. How does it apply to those that have, say, they have documents from Lower Trent that are time dated or any other agency? Do those timelines get extended for the applicant as well?
Right. So my understanding is that all planning deadlines have been thwarted. Yeah, they're just until such time as the pandemic is over and restrictions are lifted, the province is saying those deadlines are off the table. So that's my understanding. But I'm in agreement with what everyone so far has said with regard to moving forward with virtual planning meetings. And I don't know if we need a motion to direct you to do so, Madam Clerk, but I think if you have the sense that council wants to get moving on these planning meetings, let's start down that road. Councillor LeBlanc, you had your hand.
No, I was just pointing to the CAO. He was pointing at me, so I was pointing back at him. That's it.
I thought he was pointing at me. Isn't that weird? Mr. Castleman?
My only comment was that 2.5 hours ago, our first motion was to incorporate virtual planning meetings into the May 4th and May 19th meeting. So I don't think we need anything more.
Very well. So that would then, we would need to then again suspend the procedural bylaw to incorporate statutory public meetings, and that's okay. These things are going to have to be fluid with these virtual meetings as we go down the road, and so far so good. I think council's understanding of that, so we'll just conduct the business we need to conduct as we go down that road. Thank you for that reminder, Bob. Appreciate it. Madam Clerk.
I don't think that we need to amend anything because we put it into our procedural bylaw that we can have virtual meetings. They don't have to be special council meetings now. We can just have regular council, but by virtual. And what we should do though is make sure that we get the agenda out in plenty of time to receive questions from the public instead of having them able to ask the questions virtually. If they could bring them to us ahead of time, then I can give them to council. You guys can direct their answers that way, or the planning department can to those people.
Good.
So,
Councillor Anderson.
So the 4th would be a push to get that out to everybody. Right, Candace?
Well, we may not have anything for the 4th, but we would for the second meeting in May. I'm not sure what Daryl has ready to go for the 4th, but that'll be on the agenda.
Let's get that planning department working.
All right, anything else for the clerk? No one? All right, so Chief Caddick, your update. Bullet points, Chief, bullet points.
I got pages and pages here.
Bullet points, Chief.
Well, you're going to hear some of the important things because there's a lot going on in this when it comes to COVID-19, because it has a pretty direct impact on our crew and our team. So we've had to adjust some of our protocols, which we've done. And that's not been just Brighton, it's been all of Northumberland County. All of the departments have adopted similar response protocols when it comes to these types of incidents. Our team has been doing really well. We are, I can tell you, and I don't mind sharing this because it is through the county, that COVID positive calls will result in a zero response from the department, and that is all fire departments in Northumberland County. If they screen positive, we don't go. The ambulance will attend, EMS responds, but that's all that responds. So that's currently where we're at. The thing is, there's many calls that are inconclusive that we still have to respond to that could very potentially be COVID positive. So we have very strict PPE guidelines now that are being followed. Screening is done by our ambulance dispatch, our dispatch, and our firefighters, and so that we can identify. We also, the province has a new portal that the deputy and I have access to, that I can tell we can do a quick search and do an address search and tell you where COVID positive patients are. And I can assure you we have them in Brighton. So don't ever think we don't. We do. Our decontamination has simple calls that used to take 15 to 20 minutes, take an hour and a half to 2 hours, because we have to decontaminate all of us. We have to decontaminate the trucks. It takes time and energy. I can tell you we've and you've seen when CEO Castleman gave his capital budget, we have installed and have working the new gear extractors or washing machines, the high-tech washing machines. We've installed dryers as well in both stations. So we've really upscaled our decontamination capacity, and we're thankful we were able to do that relatively quickly. We did see a call decline, but it has come back. Our calls dropped off because nobody would go anywhere, but we see that changing now, and we're starting to move back into our regular routine. As has been right from the get-go, my concern is always our team, the health of our team, because we are actively involved with these patients front line. We do currently have one individual who is in self-isolation at this time. We've had others that come out of isolation and are fine. So again, we monitor this. We monitor it through the Chiefs Association. The Northumberland Chiefs, we're meeting daily. We are now meeting twice a week. And so that keeps us busy with just keeping up on it. It is a fluid situation. It's changing constantly. The guidelines, I was on a call with the Ontario Fire Marshal this morning and the Premier of the province discussing, there was a really good discussion about some of the new initiatives that are coming out. So it's a busy time. I'll speak just quickly about flooding. We are monitoring that very closely. I'll let Deputy Ogden take over with that because he's been kind of looking after that side of it. Jeff, go ahead.
Thank you, Chief. Yes, every day I go out and I do water checks. Stop at 7 locations. Photos are taken at each location. They are loaded up into the municipal drive so that staff can have a look at them. The sand and sandbags are doing well, thanks to Preston and his crews. There's never any. Last year we had a problem when there was sand and no bags. Preston and his crew are really looking after it this year. The community has stepped up, like Councillor Bateman. The other day I was down in Gosport and there was over 400 bags filled, sitting there waiting to go. A lot of the property owners have, they're not using sandbags. They've gone to different ways to protect their property, so that's good. The water is rising. It goes up and down, but it always goes up higher than it goes down. That is it, sir. Okay, so just kind of further on to that, looking at, because I'm watching the statistics that come out from the IJC's, the International Joint Commission, and I also look at what comes through from the engineers out of the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers, and we are about 9 to 10 inches over where we were last year at this time, which is what we are seeing. Their predictions are looking a little better than what we've seen in last year. They're predicting a little less, so I'm hoping they're right. But again, it all is going to depend on the weather and if we have any significant rainfalls. And as long as the IJC continues to outload as much as they can, then it'll probably be in a better position. So that's where we're at from the fire department standpoint. Again, a lot going on. The stations have been closed to the public. The public support that we're seeing is absolutely phenomenal. They're doing a great job. Our public are to be commended. We see a lot of good things happening. We see more. We've got all kinds of the little stones at the fire halls. People have painted, and the support that we get from our community is amazing, and it's really uplifting for our members, and we appreciate it. We truly do. Just a quick note that the department was involved on last Tuesday night. We were at Trent Memorial Hospital for their appreciation, and that was very, very well received. That's where we are with the fire department, and I'm just going to carry on for a few moments on because I'm also the community emergency management coordinator for this municipality. So that's another hat that they've worn, and so that again comes with a lot of responsibility and a lot of discussion with the province through Emergency Management Ontario. There's quite a few different surveys that I'm filling out constantly as to our staffing levels and where we're at. PPE levels. It's more just so we can keep the government informed of what's going on and where we're at. I can tell you as well, I did have the military has reached out to us through CFB Trenton, or actually through Ottawa, through the headquarters, and I have had some conversation with them as to what our needs might be in the event that things went really sideways and we had to incorporate them. So they're aware of what our needs could be. So that's when they reached out to us. So again, they're pre-planning. They're so that if we ever get to that point that things go really bad, we know that they're going to be aware of what our requirements are. And the deputy mayor and mayor, of course, have alluded that we do our emergency control group meets every week. We discuss all of these things. Every week we have the consideration. The mayor and the deputy mayor are given the opportunity to decide whether we should declare an emergency or not. At this point, we haven't, because we have not been overwhelmed. We are handling things that happen because we have a great team. We've got a good municipal team, and we're able to see. So we're going to move forward on that. I think that is pretty much, you know, all where we're at. We're trying to be positive. We got to encourage the community. We want them to be safe, and you know, we do have some vulnerable occupancies within our community, and we certainly keep them close. I keep in very close contact with them to make sure they're surviving and have the necessary equipment and PPE that they require for their staff and their residents. Thank you. Was that short enough, Mayor?
No comment, Chief. Thank you very much. Thank you, Deputy Chief, for your comments, and I'll open the floor to members of council if you have any brief questions for the Chief. Anyone? Go ahead, Councillor LeBlanc.
Hope I'm on, just check here. Okay, Chief, through you, Mayor, Chief Caddick, did I hear you say we have confirmed cases of the virus in Brighton Township municipality?
There are cases in the municipality of Brighton.
Thank you.
Anyone else? We'll move on. Mr. Hagerman, do you have any comments?
I have some updates if you have time, but if we don't, then we can move on. It's fine.
If you can do them quickly, please.
Just a few things. The servicing of the industrial park has been put on hold for now. Hydro obviously doesn't. They're essential. This project is not essential. We have been in touch with Union Gas between Scott and Preston, and they are doing some due diligence with the property owners of our lots in the industrial park, getting some stuff ready with them. So that's in the queue as well. And if it wasn't for the pandemic, Hydro would probably be pretty much near complete. When they emailed Scott last week, they said they only had 1 week of work left. So we've been right there with them. Just we've been given some unfortunate circumstances. We do have some agreements of purchase and sale signed, and contingent on the servicing and on site plan approval. So we have had some of our folks stay with us even through the uncertain financial times, and we are continuing to sell land. We have kept Jewel Engineering on retainer. They're continuing to work with us through our wetlands reclamation project in our industrial park, and are continuing to examine ways, take other examples in other parts of Ontario where a large space such as 11 acres has been reclamated, taken out of a wetlands designation and given back to its originally intended use. So just continuing to work on that even through this. Over at Memory Junction, I was able to retain the services of a structural engineer who has provided me with a report of the building as well. So that was all done before the outbreak really and the pandemic really broke. Unfortunately, the environmental assessment has definitely been affected, and we haven't been able to hire that consultant yet, or even if we had to, that is not an essential service at this time. So that will have to be on hold for now over at Memory Junction, but we are continuing to work on that. Luckily, before the outbreak, we did have our hotel feasibility study consultant hired and beginning to work. So I've been on a couple different calls with them, and they've given me some due diligence, some research to help them out with, and they've been starting to work on Brighton. Obviously, they're not traveling to our community while this is going on, but they've started to do some homework with that study. Obviously, a big chunk of my role through the last 5-6 weeks has been from the communications end of things, working at ensuring that we're communicating on all channels, and things are fairly well received. One of the more positive notes was the mayor's Easter message that we ended up utilizing our notification system, and through that we had several people register. I believe somewhere between new household registrations came because of that. So it was really good to see that we were able to get that message out there so instantaneously, reminding people, just because it's a long weekend, you know, we gotta stay the course with our physical distancing, and obviously the odd negative comment on social media, but that's par for the course when you're dealing with municipal pages on social media. And then kind of to summarize, I believe as things sort of, I know the province, you know, put out a report today that we are seeing a peak. We are seeing some good news. So we're seeing some good results. So in my estimation, by the next May 12th, we maybe we'll start seeing some things becoming reopening. So, you know, we did the whole slate of getting the communications out there. What's closed, what's open, what's going to stay closed. It's going to be the reverse of that. I believe in May and June and July, and as we reopen community centers and community parks and all those things become reopened, we've got to get that next wave of communication out. And as well, thinking of a recovery plan and assisting our local businesses, I think is going to be super important. I've got some money budgeted in certain places that maybe we can look at help, you know, thinking about marketing plans that the municipality can help, you know, recovery plans for our local businesses. So that's sort of on my brainwave too, but those are some of the things we've been keeping up with. And obviously the communications end of my job has been very busy the last 5-6 weeks.
Thank you, Ben. Any questions for Mr. Hagerman? Thank you very much, everyone. Mr. Castleman, any closing remarks? No is a perfectly good answer. Thank you. Move into bylaws now, unless there's anyone else that has any other comments in the round table. All right, so I'll move into bylaws. Our first bylaw, and I'll need a mover and a seconder, is that council gives a bylaw its first, second, and third reading and finally passes on this date, being a bylaw to appoint temporary law enforcement officers during the COVID-19 pandemic for the Municipality of Brighton.
So moved.
It was moved by Councillor Tadman and seconded by Councillor Bateman. Is there any discussion? Madam Clerk, will you please call the vote?
Councillor Ron Anderson,
Yes.
Councillor Mark Bateman,
Yes.
Councillor Doug LeBlanc,
Yes.
Councillor Emily Raleigh,
Yes.
Councillor Mary Tadman,
Yes.
Deputy Mayor Laura Vink,
Yes.
Mayor Brian Ostrander.
Yes.
Carried.
Thank you. Our second bylaw is that council gives a bylaw its first, second, and third reading and finally passes on this date, being a bylaw to authorize the chief administrative officer to execute the appropriate documents and deeds, transfer title of municipally owned property, being Municipality of Brighton Lot 7 on Schedule B to the agreement, to SB Plumbing and Heating. I'll need a mover. Councillor Anderson, and a seconder. Councillor Rowley. Is there any discussion? Madam Clerk, will you please call the vote?
Councillor Ron Anderson,
Yes.
Councillor Mark Bateman,
Yes.
Councillor Doug LeBlanc,
Yes.
Councillor Emily Rowley,
Yes.
Councillor Mary Tadman,
Yes.
Deputy Mayor Laura Vink,
Yes.
and Mayor Brian Ostrander.
Yes.
Carried.
Thank you. Our third bylaw is that council gives a bylaw its first, second, and third reading and finally passes on this date, being a bylaw to stop up, close, and convey a portion of an unopened road allowance comprising a part of Casey Lane Road, road allowance known as Part 2, Plan 38R 1507 in the Municipality of Brighton. Is there any discussion? Oh, wait, I'll need a mover and a seconder. Councillor Rowley, second. Councillor Anderson. Now discussion. Madam Clerk, will you please call the vote?
Councillor Ron Anderson,
Yes.
Councillor Mark Bateman,
Yes.
Councillor Doug LeBlanc,
Oh, yes.
thank you, Councillor Emily Rowley,
Yes.
Councillor Mary Tadman,
Yes.
Deputy Mayor Laura Vink,
Yes.
Mayor Brian Ostrander.
Yes.
It's carried.
Thank you. Any comments at all before I make a motion, or put a motion on the floor here to go into closed session? Okay, just remember that closed session is not by Zoom meeting, it is by conference call, so we will suspend the Zoom meeting and then we will go ahead.
But they're not to do anything. Randy's gonna do it.
Okay.
Right, Randy? Is Randy there?
So when we enter into closed session, we can just walk away from, or Randy will suspend the Zoom meeting, and then we will call in through the other mechanism for our conference call for our closed session meeting.
That's correct. I'm going to take care of it from here.
Very well, thank you.
Mayor? You
Yes?
gonna call for a 5-minute recess or anything? Or?
Sure.
Well, I'm
10.
I need
I'll
to
make
leave
a
the
motion.
chambers. I need to leave the chambers and go to my office to make the conference call
there
anyway.
you
So
go.
you have at least as much time as it takes me to get upstairs.
Run.
Mayor, did you have a question? Your microphone.
Can't hear you.
Oh, I was gonna ask for a bathroom break, that's all.
There you go.
Walk slowly.
We'll do a 10-minute recess. Before we do that, then, I should have a motion that we carry the meeting on to its natural conclusion because we will be past the 3 hours. So let's do that first. The procedural.
I'll move it.
Thank you.
I'll second it.
Thank you. Let's move by Councillor Rowley, seconded by Councillor Tadman, that the council meeting proceed to its natural conclusion. Is there any discussion?
Nope.
Madam Clerk, please call the vote.
Councillor Ron Anderson,
Yes.
Councillor Mark Bateman,
Yes.
Councillor Doug LeBlanc,
Yes.
Councillor Emily Rowley,
Yes.
Councillor Mary Tadman,
Yes.
Deputy Mayor Laura Vink,
Yes.
Mayor Brian Ostrander.
Yes.
Okay, it's carried.
Yes.
We're gonna go into closed now, right? So that you can,
Right, so I'm gonna read the motion to go into closed.
Okay.
And then we will start the closed meeting 10 minutes after that point. Give everyone a
Okay.
chance
May
to
I,
do whatever they need to do.
may I ask a question?
Yes,
Technical question?
yes.
So, because we have to come back to this meeting, right, to finish up? We have to
No.
come out of closed, right?
Yes.
So do we just leave the screen alone and Mr. Watson?
Right.
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Randy takes care of all the Zoom stuff, and yes, we will be coming back to this meeting to close the actual council meeting.
Okay, yeah, so all I
After
just
we're
have to
done.
do is mute and I'm good.
Through your worship, council, what I'm going to do is put everybody in the waiting room, and then bring people back into the meeting afterwards.
Good idea.
Deputy
Good
Mayor?
idea.
I like the waiting room.
Deputy Mayor?
Again, okay, just to be clear, so we're not going out of this meeting, but we do need to call in on our phones in order
Right.
to join
Yes,
the close. And
That's
then
correct.
we will go back into the meeting on Zoom to close the meeting.
That is true.
Good.
When do you want us to call in? After the break or before?
Immediately when you're done your break, call in.
Okay, I'll see you in an hour or so.
No. You
I
have
won't go
10
home,
minutes
Mary.
max. 10 minutes max. If
Gotta
after
cook my
10 minutes I
dinner.
have a quorum, we're moving forward. So the motion will read that council resolve itself into closed session April 20th, 2020 at 4:50 p.m. pursuant to the Ontario Municipal Act 2001, subsection 239(2)b, being a personal matter about an identifiable individual, including a municipal or local board employee, specifically rent abatement. Is there any discussion? I need a mover, so I need a mover and seconder.
I'll move it.
It was moved by Councillor LeBlanc and seconded by Deputy Mayor Vink. There's no discussion. Madam Clerk, will you please call the vote?
Yeah. Councillor Ron Anderson. Councillor Mark Bateman.
Yes.
Councillor Doug LeBlanc.
Yes.
Councillor Emily Rowley.
Carry on. She doesn't appear to be there.
Councillor Mary Tadman.
Yes.
Deputy Mayor Laura Vink.
Yes.
Mayor Brian Ostrander.
Yes.
Okay, carried.
So Randy, you can go ahead and park us. tell me when you're ready and I'll call the meeting back to order. We're ready to go? Okay, so it is 5:26 p.m. and I will call the meeting back to order with a motion. I'll need a mover and seconder that council rise and report from closed session April 20th, 2020 at 5:26.
So moved.
I'll second.
That's moved by Councillor Tadman and seconded by Councillor Rowley. Is there any discussion? Madam Clerk, will you please call the vote?
Councillor Ron Anderson,
Yes.
Councillor Mark Bateman,
Yes.
Councillor Doug LeBlanc. Doug?
Okay, yes.
Councillor Emily Rowley,
Yes.
Councillor Mary Tadman,
Yes.
Deputy Mayor Laura Vink,
Yes.
Mayor Brian Ostrander.
Yes.
Okay, carried.
Thank you. So one piece of business coming out from the closed session, and the motion will read that council authorizes a rent abatement for the Brighton YMCA of 50% of amounts due during the COVID-19 pandemic declaration of emergency period. I'll need a mover. Got 3 movers. Councillor Bateman, seconded by Deputy Mayor Vink. Is there any further discussion on this?
Nope.
Madam Clerk, will you please call the vote?
Yes. So Councillor Ron Anderson. Ron?
Sorry about that. Yes.
Councillor Mark Bateman,
Yes.
Councillor Doug LeBlanc,
Yes.
Councillor Emily Rowley,
Yes.
Councillor Mary Tadman,
Yes.
Deputy Mayor Laura Vink,
Yes.
Mayor Brian Ostrander.
Yes.
Carried.
We'll move into the confirmatory bylaw. The council gives a bylaw its first, second, and third reading and finally passes on this date, being a bylaw to confirm the proceedings of the corporation of the Municipality of Brighton Council meeting held on April 20th, 2020. Is there a mover?
So moved.
So it's moved by Councillor Tadman and seconded by Councillor Bateman. Is there any discussion? Madam Clerk, will you please call the vote?
Councillor Ron Anderson,
Yes.
Councillor Mark Bateman,
Yes.
Councillor Doug LeBlanc,
Yes.
Councillor Emily Rowley. Emily?
Yes.
Councillor Mary Tadman,
Yes.
Deputy Mayor Laura Vink,
Yes.
Mayor Brian Ostrander.
Yes.
Carried.
All right, so thank you, everyone. Thank you, staff, for their roundtable discussion. I think it was a useful commentary. I think it was helpful for council to hear everything that's going on. I appreciate everybody's indulgence. I know it was about 3.5-hour meeting. That's long for this council, so appreciate everyone's attention. And it is.
Could I just make it? Could I just make a comment?
Yes.
Can I make a comment?
Yes. Why not?
Thank you. Mayor, I would just like to wish you happy birthday tomorrow. Those of us who know you have hit the half-century mark. So enjoy your day.
But Councillor Rowley, you're wrong.
Am I really wrong?
You're a year early. You're a year early. Next year.
I'm ready for next year. But anyway, you're getting close to the half-century. Enjoy
I
your
sure am. I sure am. And don't worry, my children remind me of that as frequently as they possibly can.
I thought she was a few years late, but hey.
He lies.
Okay, so now it's
Good night, everybody.
Now it's 5:30 p.m. and I'm going to declare this meeting adjourned. Thank you, everyone, very much. Take care.
Bye.
Bye-bye.